need to be brought into this. So if we look at pillar 2, and I started pillar 2, not pillar 1, because pillar 1 is making schools strong and safe, and over 90% of our school stock are in existence. So a lot of that will be to do with retrofit and to be assessing what we have got in place. So my first priority is school disaster management set up for within the schools themselves, colleges, universities. We're embracing all of the educational facilities. Right? So management DER training is absolutely essential. Identifying the strengths we have within individual schools, and as you'll see here in my notes, clustering with collaborative strengths of our local schools, identify our own weaknesses, right? Use the strengths in the community or district. Ask for outside help. It is never a shame to request assistance to save lives. All right. Without good school disaster risk reduction management, we cannot achieve structural resilience nor DER strategies within the school or curricula. Hence, I put this one first. Right. So again, there are good resources to be accessed, and the links are here. Right. And we're going to touch on some of the other points in a moment. Now, structural safety. As I said, over 90% of schools are in existence. New schools are being built. Some are being replaced, relocated, and many will be retrofitted over the years. But 90% are in existence in one format or another. Now, retrofit is a very costly, can be a very costly exercise. So we have to think very carefully whether we should be retrofitting or whether we should be replacing. Right? One of the challenges within schools is that schools evolve over a period of time. So the larger schools may have buildings of many ages over that time. So this is where part of the challenges are. So assessment of site, assessment of buildings, assessment of the surrounding environment, assessment of the risks, assessment of capacity to cope, assessment of red flagging, and I'll explain a bit about that in a moment, assessment of reporting procedure. If it doesn't look right, report it. School buildings should be built to code. Converting or using domestic buildings or using old buildings is not acceptable because they are below code standards. Schools, hospitals, and so forth are built to code plus a percentage, all right, which is decided at national level. And the cause of risk of vulnerability to collapse and fire and misuse generally. So we must not reuse old buildings and thinking it's a free building for education. It is suggested schools be used as a focal point, working examples of resilient construction methods for the communities to replicate. And I'll explain that in a second. Schools being designed and built as visual examples displaying every facet of safe construction. And what I mean by this, I mean that the fact is that if we are going to build a school, usually, but often they're centralized to communities for reasonable access, and the communities have access to them for other things apart from just the children's education. So we should consider using schools as a prime example of construction methods and use them to demonstrate to communities on how to build their own homes safely as well. So that's an added advantage of concentrating on schools. So hazards awareness and mitigation, risk reduction and resilience education. It's not just about curricula, but it's about addressing school safety through education activities, systems including the following areas: education for sustainable development, child-centered learning, using and working with the children themselves, formal curriculum integration and infusion, national consensus-based key messages coming from central government and from state level, Teacher training and staff development, very, very important. It's not just about what's going on within the school itself, but it's bringing the training of staff and teachers to a national standard, so it's common across all districts. And extracurricular and community-based informal education, bringing in the community and developing their awareness to the hazards. They are contributory to making schools safe. Conflict, sensitive education, diversity, acceptance, peace, and social cohesion. Very nice United Nations wording. But we don't only think about the common normal hazards, but also about areas of higher security of conflict and strife and mass migration, economic migration, and schools can be overrun by trying to help others in need. And I'll touch on that in a moment. So knowing your risks, deciding best practice for mitigation, best procedure to protect education materials and students' assets, and that means their schoolwork, and best response and best strategy for recovery to ensure the soonest education continuity. Really, really important we have continuity of education, and I'll touch more on that in a moment. So response examples, and we're not going to touch, I'm not going to stay on this very, very much, but the reality is drop, cover, and hold for earthquakes, and we have storms, wind, fire, flood drills, and then there's lockdown for security of outside risks caused by other humans. Right. So, in America, we see this often now with shootings and so on and so forth. And, we're all countries have some susceptibility to that. So, we must include that within our strategies for response examples. So earthquakes are one of the most devastating of disasters, and at presently where we only get, if we have an early warning system, 30 seconds of early warning. Otherwise, it all comes as a surprise. So very, very important that children and staff know what to do during the earthquake. Immediately duck, cover, and hold, not trying to run out of buildings and so on and so forth, because it is very difficult to run in an earthquake. The ground is moving underneath you, doors are jamming, doors are swinging around, items are falling off shelving, and so on and so forth. So very, very important that we duck, cover, and hold during that shake period. However, we've got to have gender equality, inclusiveness, disability assistance, and delegated student leaders. So it can't all be thrown just upon the teachers to coordinate everything. We need to practice our drills and ensure that children are helping each other. And that is really crucial. And I've had these demonstrations and promoted this within Indonesia and China and across India, different locations and elsewhere around the world. Very, very important we embrace the older students, older children, to help the younger ones, and the ones with disabilities. They may be blind, may be hard of hearing, they may be disabled insofar as they can't run easily, and they may well be in wheelchairs. So there's a different, duck, cover, and hold. And for someone in a wheelchair, it is slightly different. It is lock, cover, and hold. We must be inclusive in our strategies. Okay, so non-structural hazards, and this is really, really important. Time and time again, I go in and do school inspections in different locations, everywhere from Nepal to Indonesia, even in Japan, and so forth over the decades, and realize that, people forget about emergency exits. They think, yes, the door is there, we've got the clear passageways, and then we have bookshelves and cupboards and so forth, very close in proximity. When those fall over, they jam doors, right? And then I see people say that, well, we've got it fixed to the wall, and they put a piece of wire around, and then they've nailed it to the wall. And unfortunately, earthquakes shake roofs off, so they're going to shake nails out of the wall. They have to be bolted very, very firmly, right? Even for the smallest of cupboards, because the smallest of cupboards are going to cause injury to the smallest of the children. So really, really important we look at the non-structural hazards can often be very easily and inexpensive to fix. Positioning furniture differently in a room, bolting heavy and tall furniture to walls, and removing dangerous and heavy items from on top of those shelves. All possible fixes. Okay, so review all emergency exits, identify the potential falling items that block access and exits, move them or fix them to the walls. Remember, windows shatter in wind and in earthquakes, doors distort and jam closed, right? And light fittings fall, right? And if you have the luxury of AC units, they also fall. So you have to think about your training in drills within the classrooms, within the school as a whole. Really, really important. And do not assume that because it looks fixed, it is fixed. Earthquakes, wind, and then even we come to flood, but we should have exited by the time flood has come. But floods will wipe things away, and again, block doorways and block exits. So if you are caught by a flash flood, you have to think about that very carefully. So surround safety considerations. I was in Indonesia some years ago, and we looked at one particular school that had been retrofitted, and it was looking great. It was fantastic. And then I looked around the surrounding area on the boundaries of the school at a higher level, and we had an enormous electrical pylon communication system and another 4 or 5 story building literally overlooking the school. And I asked, what happens if that building collapses, which is not built to code, obviously? And the answer was it would take out 3 or 4 of the classrooms. So therefore, we have to make these considerations not only of making our schools safe, but our environment safe. And if the school is going to stay there, then we've got to encourage those buildings around the school, right, to be brought up to building code standards and be robust enough not to cause damage into the school and deaths of our children and teachers. So check your perimeters for what might fall in with the school classrooms. Other non-code compliant buildings are a risk if close by, including aerials and electricity poles and multiple cables potentially falling onto a school, or the escape routes, or indeed the assembly points. Really, really important to consider that. Right? No point putting them all out into a central courtyard where items and buildings and cables and so forth can fall on top of them. So we're just moving them from one dangerous zone into another dangerous zone. So safe school environments spread beyond the boundaries. Access to the school, can we get the ambulances? Can we get emergency rescue down to them? Or is that access liable to be blocked by landslide or other buildings? Local industry, fire, chemicals, and explosive risks. So often schools are given a piece of land which no one else wants. And I've seen this in Pakistan and elsewhere. And the problem is, then we find we have little industries, rubber tire collection and chemical manufacturing or chemical use industries. And if they catch fire, it's going to be toxic fumes and fire on top of that. So it's not just the fire itself, it's toxic fumes. We must look to see what we're going to be affected by. Tall local homes, we've touched on, streams and rivers liable to flash floods, and landslide risk onto the school or onto its access roads. Floodplain proximity. How many times do we find we've been given a nice flat bit of land, and it's flat for a particular reason? It's usually a floodplain. And with climate change, we are now seeing increasing flood all over the world, right? And so therefore, we must think about the positioning of our schools. Our children, our future. Fire risks from the surrounding waste and wooden structures as well. So it could include forest fires. So putting a school in the middle of a woodland is equally as dangerous as putting it next to a tire factory. Right? So check your changing environment regularly, assess your new risks, and report adverse changes. Your environment will be changing. Really, really important that we realize this. What you looked at last year will be changed today and will be changed in a year's time. So early warning resource collaborations. This is a point where you shouldn't be having to know everything yourself. You should be collaborating with all sorts of outside expertise. I've been called in today to give this simple presentation to raise your awareness of some of the points you should be looking at. That's excellent, and I continue to be available to help. But you should be able to do this within your communities, within your state, within your nation as a whole, right? There's a lot of good advice out there, a lot of proven advice within all nations. No one nation is perfect, I can assure you. So seeking help by collaboration with other schools, I like the idea of 4 or 5 schools coming together, because within the teachers, which are predominantly often the management as well, you have strengths and you have weaknesses. And some schools have strengths in one direction and others have a strength in another. Collaboration and pooling that resource together is the perfect option and a perfect solution to this. Identifying the needs to establish local early warning and awareness of emergency risks or emerging risks. So this is a very, very important aspect when it comes to flooding. Indonesia is a good example where the schools at the top of the valley communicate to the schools at the bottom of the valley when there's heavy rains. So they know there's a liability of flooding. So what do? They move all their school books to the second floor, right? It only takes 20 minutes. No, it doesn't even take that. 10 minutes, 5 minutes to move their school books to the upper floor. They don't lose their resources, right? So really, really important that schools work together for multiple reasons: preparedness and response. Clustering of other schools collaborative that might be in the front line of a crisis or upstream of floods, and experiencing and developing hazard events first ahead of your own school. They can pass on. We have a fire, we have a forest fire, it's moving your way. We have a flood, it's moving your way. We've got tremendous wind up here, it might be moving your way. All right. So therefore, creating an opportunity that they or yourselves communicate with other schools and communities. Right. So it's working with the communities as well, generating crucial early warnings, thus enabling the response and protection of school resources, children's schoolwork, so critical for their exams and their development. They don't want to be losing all their work. And then, of course, saving lives also offers the opportunity for crossover of teacher provision, resource sharing, and children's support and education continuity of one school where individual teachers or school resources are adversely affected by a crisis event. Work as a team. Schools clustering can work as a team, helping each other. It's not a competition. It's not a competition. So resilient school premises use in crisis. This is a critical one within your crisis management. We build schools to an additional percentage of building codes, and of course then they become ideal for refuges during crisis. A priority for schools is education and continuity of education. School children have witnessed and realized the disastrous effects of COVID during this last year, where they've not had access to school. They've had to do everything online. Their exams have been postponed time and time again. And this does have an effect upon them, because they should be having a continuity of education from primary to secondary to college on to university. And if they end up being 1 or 2 years behind, it does give them a restriction, limited ability to compete in the work market. Right? So we need to have this continuity of education. So therefore, using schools as refuge is fine for 24 or 48 hours, but using it for weeks at a time, or using it for unrelated events which even the school was not affected by, you've got to be really careful. I really ask that that's not the case, because what happens if we use the school facilities, the children are at home, parents then have to be child-minded. So, consequently, while school buildings might provide short-term refuge, they should not be used for extended periods for shelter and food distribution and livestock shelter. All of these things come into play. Alternatives will often cause damage and additional cost to the school for recovery. Materials, resources, and classwork. Really important. Okay. So the restart of education as soon as possible statement. This is a key element of recovery is reinstating of education. The sooner children resume school, the sooner normal routines are established, with the parents relinquished from child minding, being then able to concentrate on rebuilding their losses and generating an income, especially within subsistence communities where they are literally working to live, not working to make profit. In cities, parents often work for daily wages to sustain their families. In rural communities, parents need to work within a subsistence lifestyle. Both will be constrained if their recovery, if they need to mind their school-age children as well. Now, this is really, really important, right? And we've witnessed this time and time again over the last 20 years. Importantly, isolated children in a post-crisis environment where parents are distracted are more vulnerable to being kidnapped, trafficked during the recovery of confusion. Schools and education reinstatement as soon as possible, therefore act as additional child security. Really, really important. So towards our end here, just as a reminder, and I won't read the whole period of this, the whole paragraphs here, but why start with schools? We've touched on the points of why we start with schools. They are our future, all right? All right, so we must concentrate on making it a safe environment, an efficient environment for not only the children themselves, but also for the management of the schools, of the teachers, right? And that is absolutely critical. Schools act as a focal point for community activities for adult education and awareness, family activities, community liaison, and social meetings. Right? So we mustn't forget that schools have a wider use, a useful asset needing to be protected, nurtured, and designed accordingly. Not only designed as a child-friendly learning environment, but equally a center of excellence for communities to develop socially, building resilience and capacity for enterprise and the much sought after sustainability. Right? So really, really important. So my summary is this simple. Right? These are guidance, and to every point here, there's an enormous amount of resource around the world, some being generated within the UN, much being generated within our own nations as well. So in your own languages, in multiple languages. Okay, so create a disaster management team. That is the most important start. Right? Get around a table, decide on who has strengths, where you're going to get this knowledge from, who is going to help you, and start to create the team itself. And it doesn't have to be just the teachers. Right? Assess all your risks. Take advice on risk hazard mapping, how to do it. I do not expect the math teacher or the English teacher or the Hindu teacher to understand all of this. But there is advice here where they can generate their expertise and their contribution as being part of that management team. But assessment is really, really important. Earthquakes, fire, flood, storm, winds, and landslide, and all the other aspects that come into this. And epidemics really have all been affected in this last year. Assess the structural safety of the school buildings, including nearby buildings that might affect the school. Right? Establish a red flagging system to authorities. That is absolutely crucial. If you cannot be engineers yourselves within the school, but if it doesn't look right, then report it. And you need a red flagging system so that you get through to the mayor of the town or the village, whatever, who then is able to report it to the higher authorities and engineers to come and do a formal inspection. Inspections are going across all nations all the time, but they need priorities. And it's not only the big disasters It's not only the big disasters that cause damage to schools. It can be multiple small events, multiple seismic shakes, multiple winds, multiple rain infusion. All of these can add to eventual collapse of a building. So research the best response for your location for each type of hazard. What you do in one community on a hillside or mountainside is different to what you do in a valley or in the middle of a city. So please, you need to do your research on that, and there is help available. The likes of myself and many other experts or specialists. I don't like the word expert. Specialists around the world who have experience of this, and you have that experience within India as well, in Bangladesh and the surrounding countries. So please, and in Africa as well. Please look for that specialism advice. Research best mitigation for each type of hazard, including possible relocation and retrofitting. Okay, so retrofitting is one of the obvious ones, making existing buildings stronger. But many times it is just too expensive, or in fact the school is in the wrong place. You are given a piece of land which is in the most dangerous of locations. It needs to be relocated. These are your children. Okay, work with other schools to share knowledge and resources, prepare contingency plans, disaster management plans, create early warning systems along river valleys at risk of floods, to share resources to reinstate education for children in post-disaster as soon as possible. Prepare classrooms to fix vulnerable furnitures to walls, really vital. Uh, Ensure all exits and assembly locations are kept clear. Make sure they remain safe. All right. If there's maintenance going on, I used to be head of Walt Disney Security in London for the whole of Europe, and our multiple offices. And so often scaffold and paint was being left around at emergency exits because, oh well, that's where they just dumped it, ready to take away. If there's an emergency, you cannot get through. If there's a fire, that exit is going to be on fire and burning. Absolutely vital we think about that. So ensure, practice drills. So important to respond to different types of crisis. Each crisis requires a different response: flooding to fire to earthquake. All right. So please, the more times you practice this as teachers and staff, as out of hours, and then with the children themselves, the children will help you. They will help each other. They will help the disabled. They will help the children who are deaf and maybe partially sighted and so forth. Give them responsibility. The sooner you can give children responsibility, the sooner they're part of the solution. Children are not the problem. Mismanagement is the problem. Right? Make children part of the solution. Okay, keep assessing your changes in your location. If people tell you something about what's going on up the valley, which you think might have an adverse effect upon you, as in flooding and so forth, then go and investigate. Really important. And of course, looking at new buildings being built and new industries popping up. The same facility that was once, manufacturing China dolls or whatever, could suddenly be manufacturing rubber tires. Far more dangerous. All right. So you just need to be aware of what's going on. Involve the community and parents and families in your disaster management plan. You have a lot of expertise there. You may not be aware of what parents are capable of and what they can contribute. All right. Share and exchange risk knowledge and mitigation strategies. Coordinate rescues, and protection of children during crisis. Really, these are what parents and families can contribute to. They're not just interested in their own children. Work as a team. Really important. You may have to practice this as a community, right? Who will have responsibility? Right? Because if your rescue equipment is in the school and the school does collapse, then that rescue equipment has been covered as well and is out of use. So therefore, you may be reliant upon parents coming on site. Give them basic first aid training. Give them some basic tools. All this advice is available. Save the Children have been doing an enormous amount of development on these aspects. So, UNICEF as well. Ensure accountability of all children during crisis. Forget no child. And this is where I end, because this is absolutely crucial. because we've seen time and time again in the confusion, there's people who will take advantage, not only steal the goods out of your collapsed building and your homes, but they will steal your children. I promise you, thousands go missing during these enormous crises, thousands of children. And sometimes by seemingly the most trusted types of bodies in Haiti, it was horrendous, trying to be smuggled back to much larger countries, and I won't put names to it. So they were caught in the act, thinking they're doing a wonderful thing, but in fact the children weren't even orphans, right? They had parents, and their parents were distraught. So don't allow this. You actually have to set up your boundaries around your communities to make sure you know who's coming in and who and what they're taking out. So that's really, really important. So what I say is good luck. I'm always available to give some further advice. It's 30 minutes now, or 35 minutes, is a lot to cram in, as you can see, many considerations, but it can be very successfully done as you work as a team. So I'm very happy to answer questions as and when the question and answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Just I want to second your few points. That was said in very, you can say, in very effective manner. Just I want to add some Indian context for the because we always bothered about the people living on the in rural area of India, where school safety didn't reach it, and I second your thought. Schools are supposed to reopen as soon as possible because kids are safe in school. This is a very good point. Second, you told us every exit of a school must be clear, and even you. I want to add one more step. Even in case of emergency, say in case of fire, in case of a smoke, when evacuation start, uh, obviously we need clear exit. If we don't have exit, it means we are forcing the student to stuck between the two walls in a smoke, or in you can say in rebel, or in water. So we need clear exit. uh, I think you explained this school disaster management plan in a very well manner. And though it was long, but subject is very long and very extensive. So it's need, I think, more time, and we will deliberate. Please stay here for the audience. We will take question at the end. So please be with us.
I will. I'm staying. No worries.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Please invite next speaker.
Arudhar sir. Arudhar ji. Hello.
Yes, I am here.
Adhesh ji, please you invite.
So it was
I just want to answer ask one thing, that is Subhash Datta ji join SDM if SDM sir is joined or not. Hello. Okay, we will.
Yes, audible. I am speaking.
So if sir is available, then we can go for his.
Sri Subhash Datta, Honorable Sub-Divisional Magistrate, who is here despite of his busy schedule. This is an international webinar today organized learning environment safe, student for development of disaster management plan.
Then call next speaker and let's start. Meanwhile, you follow with the SDM sir.
So now I request sir to share his experience. He's been well known SDM in our state. Since very recently he has joined most subdivision, and he is the active of system management in our state, and we can take a very good example of him. He's very much grassroots connected with each and everyone. Welcome, sir. We are your experience with us. Welcome, sir.
So kindly
Here's
check if
right.
sir is muted. If sir is muted or not, unmuted or not.
But by which ID
Sir,
is
am I audible? Sir, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible. And please let me know the ID with which sir has SDM sir has joined, so we can unmute sir.
So, sir, you can unmute yourself, sir. But we are eagerly waiting for your experience that has to be shared for participation. Sir.
धर आप आईडी बताइए, आईडी कि किस आईडी से किस नेम से वो लॉग्ड इन है. I think Dhar is in very weak signal zone.
नकुल जी, वो
Sir,
अवधेश जी एक बार फोन कर रहे हैं, उन्हें फोन करने दीजिए.
network connectivity issue may be the issue of sir. We hope that sir will be joining us very shortly. So we have.
अरूप जी, अगर आपको पता हो कि सर ने कौन सी आईडी से ज्वाइन किया है तो हम अनम्यूट करवा देंगे सर को, अगर वो कनेक्टेड हैं तो. मे बी उन्होंने ज्वाइन किया हो लेकिन वो अनम्यूट नहीं कर पा रहे हो.
नहीं, वो ज्वाइन नहीं दिख रहे हमें.
चलिए तो so we can go for the.
Yeah, so better invite next.
Yeah, we can. So we'll go for the next speaker, sir. Next speaker. We have our next speaker, Sri Gajendra Kumar ji, specialist guest on emergency communication and specialist on disaster communication. Welcome board, sir. And already I will request Avdesh sir to provide the sharing right so that sir will go through his presentation. Please.
Yes, so very good evening to you and good afternoon to some of you who are in different
Namaskar, sir.
countries. Good morning to good morning also to some others who are in different time zones. Well, we have already had a small dose of disaster in our communication. I hope you are able to hear me.
You are audible, sir. Please carry on.
Okay, thank you. So this is a minor dose of disaster in our complex communication. And this gets worse as we have a real disaster of any kind. So let me start. Okay, he has given me the web browser sharing. One moment. Okay, please can anybody confirm if you're able to see this board?
Yes, sir, it is coming, sir, but it is showing probably your screen.
Yes, is it showing the screen now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
So, okay, is it? I have just made it. I removed all the color and extra unwanted data on this, so it's on a plain white board. So I'm sure it's visible to all. Anybody please confirm?
But sir, it is showing the Zone for You solution that web browser only.
Just hold on. Yeah, this is again another example of disaster.
You have to choose your PPT probably.
Yes. Just one more. It happens to all of us.
New normal, sir.
Okay, right. Okay, is it visible?
And
Yes.
yeah, sir. You can make it full screen mode, sir.
I think this is the full screen I have.
Visible. You can go ahead, sir.
It's already.
Okay,
Please go ahead.
Okay.
Please,
Thank you.
please.
Thank you very much. So, thanks to the help, thanks to the communication, we got out of this small disaster at my end also. So, yes, we have, for the benefit of everybody else. And first of all, let me thank Mr. Gary and all the other speakers who are there, the dignitaries, all the ladies and gentlemen who are here, and I'm sure they would contribute to a better future. As he said, the schools are for the children, and the children are for our future. So let's do whatever best possible. Okay, so we have natural disasters. The worst can be earthquake, landslides, floods, rains. It's happening right now all over India too. Fires, volcanic eruption, fires in maybe in Australia, in Canada, volcanic eruption in Indonesia. We have man-made disasters, accidents of every kind come under that. And of course, we also have the pandemic now. It is how we put it. That's why I put it in a little small one, but it's very important that we are able to communicate during all these disasters. So in the process of communication, we shouldn't be creating some more disaster. So it is always best to have the simplest way of communicating. Okay, so what do we do to mitigate disaster? Yes, understand the type of disaster. Mr. Gary also gave a lot of information on that. Preparedness is most important. Yes, we can expect a disaster to strike anywhere, so one has to be prepared. And then survive the disaster and help others survive. That's also very, very important.
Mr. Gajendra, if
Yes,
possible, please keep mouthpiece near to your mouth.
Okay,
Because
okay.
because few people are texting or voicing not
All
audible.
right. All right. Am I audible now?
Yes, it's lovely.
Okay. So again, another communication disaster. I was not audible. Okay. So now we have survived the disasters, and I hope everybody is able to hear me. And yes, just like what they say in the airlines, when you have a loss in oxygen, okay, put on your mask first and then help your neighbors. So that's what I mean. First, you learn to survive, and then we should learn how to communicate to help others survive. All right, so communication, yes, from the beginning of mankind, everybody is keen on communicating, and communication has gone from shouting across, let's say, from one cave to another to this WebEx seminar where we are from all over the world, communicating with video and audio and interacting as long as a disaster does not strike. All right. So communication is most important, as Mr. Gary very well gave an example of how the schools communicate, saying that on the higher side you have. Are you able to hear me, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it is good that they have some sort of communication. So communication we have to have prior to the disaster. So we have to have regular exercise on how to communicate, how well to communicate, how fast we have to communicate. And then we are well prepared that during the disaster, we can communicate easily and well without panic. Now, the biggest disaster in communication is panicking. Then during the disaster, if we are already well versed in communication, know the art of communicating, then we can easily help others and get into the post-disaster mode where you can help in the relief, help, and then you can help in rebuilding the lives of those who are existing. And what else can we do? Okay, the world of communication, everybody knows from early 19th century, we had the telephones, we have the landline, the cellular, the satellite. Oh, I don't know what went wrong with the satellite phones. The PH is gone on a different line. Okay, so, and oh, quite a lot. I don't know.
No issue, no issue. You can carry on, please.
So it was plain English and plain text, but somehow there is a small disaster which crept in. Okay, so we have radios. Now, not many people are aware of radios. I don't know if anybody listens to anything beyond FM radio these days. We used to have AM radios, medium wave, short wave. Okay. Television, direct broadcast. Many have forgotten that we used to have a Yagi antenna on the roof, and we used to watch the TV program, and unless it points to the TV station, we were not able to get. Now everything is satellite, direct to home. And the biggest wonder is the internet. We use it for messaging, multimedia, and also what we are doing now, communicating through that. Well, everything is fine. The world is fine. We all are happy. What happens during a disaster? Telephone poles just get washed out. Landline goes. Cellular towers can collapse. Generators or power to these cellular towers can be destroyed. Satellite phones, you may not be, it's very expensive, and you may not be able to, because it requires a lot of ground station to be an uplink. It can just be destroyed. Radio stations can also be destroyed. No power, no radio. Television, yes, direct broadcast can go. Satellite, DTH, we might be able to manage for some time. The worst is the internet. The internet is destroyed. We will not be in a position to message. We will not be able to communicate. We will not have any sort of communication back and forth, because the internet relies on large infrastructure, which is like a combination of all these: satellite broadcast, landline, cellular, everything. So what do? We are back to the early days of radio. Yes, that is what survives. So we call it as amateur radio. I'm sure many of you have heard. I also have a couple of invitees who are also amateur radio enthusiasts who are on this as guests. Okay, now a little brief about it. This started almost as Marconi started. And also we can say that Sir Jagdish Chandra Bose is the one who is recognized as, we are proud that he is recognized as the inventor of radio. Marconi was good at making it into a corporation and business. Okay. So everybody wanted to communicate wirelessly without the need of the telephone, without the need of the telegraphy existing those days. So herein, people might think this is old technology. Sorry, this is absolutely up to date, state of the art even now. We have been the forerunners in technology all through. Okay, as I said, the first casualty of disaster is power outages, no power, power disrupted or damaged, cell phone towers collapsed, buildings collapsed. Yes, children may be saved if we take all the advice of Mr. Gary. Everybody is safe and sound in the school ground. But they are crying. They need help. So who can help them? So this is where the citizens of any country can be a part of the communication network. So this is called amateur radio. It is also called ham radio. There are millions of citizens all over the world who are licensed by their government to communicate with each other on allocated bands of frequencies with various sort of equipments. The equipment can be what looks like the policeman you might have seen using a small walkie-talkie. That is called a VHF walkie-talkie, very high frequency. Or it could be an equipment which is fitted in a vehicle. It could be an equipment which is fitted on at home or in the school. So these equipments do not require very big infrastructure. They are very, very portable, less power hungry. We don't require infrastructure. We don't require, yes, some of them do use repeaters, but imagine I can communicate directly to some of you who are there on this. I can see their video. I can also see somebody's name as Gabbar Singh Parmar. I can see Ashish Panda. Imagine I can communicate with him directly through the radio waves without this internet. Of course, I may not have video, but at least if I am in trouble, I can say, hey, I'm in trouble. There's a fire here. Help me out. So that is what survives all the calamities so far. It has been proven to survive from 1910 till yesterday. So this is something which will survive any calamity in future. The radio equipments are getting smaller and smaller. The power requirements are smaller and it is very portable. So I can talk to Arup from here on the radio, and if there is a problem, I can help him. And it is so wonderful that there are times when we had disaster in India. I was situated in a place called Avadi in Tamil Nadu, and I was the first one to listen to a call for help from a group of radio amateurs who were in Andaman Nicobar. And I was able to communicate 24/7 with them. And one of them was in the Nicobar Island where you had nothing, everything has collapsed. He was just sitting amongst the debris. And I told him, just keep on reducing your power. I will keep hearing you. And I gave him company for whatever was required. Information was transferred. I kept him, like, keeping him awake. And finally, he was using a power which was just enough to light a torch bulb. And I was able to copy his signals directly in India mainland. So that's the beauty of this wonderful system. And it has helped and proven it very, very well. Okay, why does it survive? As I said, small, no infrastructure required, small equipments and antennas, portable, simple to use. Every school can have one. A few teachers can have them in their pocket. Yes, you all can have phones also. But when the cell phone towers are down, when your SIM card has lost its charge of money, currency, all you can do is probably use it to hammer some nails or lever out some window panes or whatever to get out. Okay. So direct communication from across the city to global communication. I was, I can't say fortunate enough. I was able to help some people during the disaster of the World Trade Center, directly sitting in Bangalore. So someone somewhere in the world will be listening to you because we all use several bands which are open, monitored by a lot of people, lakhs and lakhs, millions of people all over the world. And what can we do? You have voice, you have messages, you can send pictures, and this is what we did during the several disasters in India also. I was there during the Orissa disaster with a network working for 24/7. 200 plus people were all over Orissa carrying the radio fitted in the car, in the chief minister's house as control room. And everybody, voice is sufficient for messaging? Yes, if there is a need for sending a picture, that can also be done. Okay. So what can these radio amateurs do? Well, there are large number of them. They are self-enthusiasts. They are interested in the hobby. They are interested in communicating with people. So they know how to communicate. They can pick up messages from, say, one school which says, okay, I have a school wall broken. I need sand and cement. It's raining in another place. I need a boat. So this can be communicated to another, maybe the town, or maybe to another village which is dry, and they can afford to send you this. And when they are traveling, yes, we can also have another person who is operating from the car or the truck. And he says, okay, here's a relief coming at this time. And where do we send it? What do we do? So this is a beautiful way of managing a disaster when communication fails. Yes, assist the relief and medical teams, volunteer teams. You would be surprised that this hobby may sound new to you, but it's very, very old. We have millions across the world. There are world famous doctors, world famous surgeons, there are dentists, there are nurses, there are engineers, there are every astronaut who goes into space is a radio amateur, and they love to communicate from space to us. We also enjoy it. Yes, we have government officials, we have defense officials. I myself am an ex-defense officer. We have police, we have children, we have housewives, and every walk of life, as long as they are responsible citizen who would like to do something. Yes, they can set up small communication centers in every school, in every village, as Tripura has about 800 villages. Imagine if a few got marooned or got disconnected. Right now, a few have been disconnected also. Okay, so we can communicate with each other and keep life going. Communicate from remote villages, towns to cities, states, countries, including space. So I always say sky is not the limit for us. Yes, here is a small view of what sounds as what can be done. Here are some of the equipment, like the one here is a small walkie-talkie. Believe me, you can talk to the astronaut in space with this in your hand. You can also pick up messages from a repeater which is up there in the sky, which is a satellite. You can talk to somebody else across the city, and with this radio, it looks. I don't know if I should have put a scale to it. It is a radio which is the size of your car radio. So that's some of them. And here, those who are interested can also build something. This is, if you might see, it has a small LCD display and a small PCB. The intent is to communicate. You can go to a Bindi Bazaar in your city, either by cycle, or you can pull out your BMW car from the garage, clean it, and go and get it. The purpose is the same. How you do it does not matter. And here is a world-class, very expensive kind of radio. Yes, it's all a personal choice, ideas to communicate, and you can do it without uh, much on it. And this is a simple wire antenna which you can use during a disaster. You just throw a wire onto a tree, and believe me, you can work the world with it. So why not from one school to another, or from one village to another, or village to a town? So how can we operate? We can operate in several ways. We can have fixed locations. Yes, every school. Maybe I should ask Arup. I think he said there are 35 schools in Tripura. So let's say there are 800 villages. So and the towns, we might have about 2,000 schools. Every school could have a fixed station. They can communicate with each other, And as Gary mentioned, yes, this is to help each other. So no need of competition. We can have competitions to see who can communicate to the furthermost school anywhere in the world. That's good. Then we can also have the setup taken by people, by volunteers to the disaster site itself, where they can be on site and help in whatever way they can, either by communication or calling for help and assisting them. It can be fitted on vehicles, on two-wheelers, cars, jeeps, ambulances, aircrafts, even a cycle will do. So this can be a mobile kind of operation. How do we network? The simplest is voice. I can save bandwidth by switching off the video. I can be on voice. So voice is sufficient. We are trying to help someone else. So we can have simple network. We can connect all schools around a town together. The towns can be connected by another network. The towns can be connected by a city, and this is totally dynamic. As people move, we can communicate with them without the need of any infrastructure or big infrastructure. We don't need a cellular tower. We don't need a landline. We don't need anything else, not even the satellite. Quick deployment. Yes. How much time would it take to pull out a radio from a pocket, switch it on, and speak? It's as fast as that. And sometimes, if you want to put up a wire antenna on the tree which is surviving, or on the top of the building, you just have to throw the wire. It could take a couple of tries, and 10 minutes you are communicating what is required, helping somebody or asking for help. Okay, how do we communicate? We communicate across cities and world on various bands which are given to the radio amateurs all over the world. There is an international organization, and then every government authorizes you to communicate in these bands. So we have what is called very high frequency. That's the walkie-talkie what I showed. Then we have the high frequency, the little bigger radios, and the wire antenna on the tree what I mentioned. So those are simple enough and good enough to communicate all over the world. Yes, we also have repeaters. We have a repeater, but we may not use them because that's also as good as a cell phone tower. It could fall off. But we have fixed repeaters, we have portable repeaters. We could have a small repeater fitted on a car, which goes up on a hill, which is not flooded, and we can communicate 60, 70, 100 kilometers from there. Then we also have satellites. The LEO is low Earth orbiting satellite. We can communicate to that. We also have a geo satellite. We also communicate to that. Almost you can cover half the globe with it. And what all can you send? You can send voice, you can send data, you can send images, you can send videos also. Yes, there are a few things one has to look into. This is an open channel, so you cannot have privacy. We don't need privacy when you're calling for help. Anybody who hears us should be glad to come and help us. You cannot speak business. Definitely. Just as I'm seeing you, I don't know, Mr. Tarun, what business you and I can do. I have no idea. You're just there and I'm speaking to you. We cannot speak any secret which is related to the government. Nope, not at all. We are interested in helping in communication during the disaster, and even during normal life. We like to be on friendly terms with each other. So borders do not exist for us. We speak to everyone as long as it's not something politics, it is not secret, it is not business, and it's nothing obscene. So we have the whole world of knowledge to share. We can start with the sun, and we can end with Pluto, or whatever it is, from astronomy to zoology. No taboos. Yes, here is a picture received directly from the space station by one of my friend who is also here. He is a pilot by profession, and he's also a radio amateur. And this is what he received. You can see probably the date also, 22nd 6. So this was in commemoration of some of the astronauts who went into space. So God forbid we have a disaster. If I have a picture of a disaster and I need help, and let's say we need help from somebody else, we can always send a picture across and get it going. Okay, so a lot must be curious. What is this? What can we do? How do we become one? Very easy. Any responsible city, okay, some small typo errors here, of the country, of our country or any country above the age of 14 years. A brief knowledge of operating a radio. Believe me, operating the radio can be much simpler than operating a cell phone. And it is much, much easier. So brief knowledge of operating procedure. Yes, what to do, how to do. How do I call somebody? How do I speak to somebody? How do I pass on the message? Wonderful, clear, simple. And yes, you need a license from the government, the Ministry of Communication of our country and Ministry of Communication of every country is willing to give you a unique call sign because you have decided that you're going to be a radio amateur. You would like to be friends with the whole world, and also during disaster, you would like to help others, help yourself also. And as long as you pass the criteria of a good citizen, you definitely can get it. The amateurs, radio amateurs, were the ones who invented, you can say, the SMS language in a different way, because we started using earlier days, we use Morse, we also still use Morse, we use voice, we use varieties of digital modes. You can connect your laptop to your equipment and transmit a whole page of data. Let's imagine there are 35 schools and I have 300 students each, and I would like to send a list of 300 into 35, approximately say 1,000 something, to the city saying, yes, all of them are safe. Now please send me a good amount of food and water. So the whole thing can be listed, put it onto your computer, connected to your radio, one click of the button, 1,000 names saying that they all survived and they're happy goes away to the other side for help. Yes, we can also, during extreme crisis, you can also use voice if you don't have a PC, but then it could take a longer time to repeat the name, get the address correct. So we are up to date in communication, and it'll be a pleasure to see that every school in India or every school, yes, there are plenty of schools all over the world which are having this facility, and that's also a big boon to them to help their help their community, their city, maybe their country. So here is a small example of what I meant by the SMS language. So CU, everybody knows. We were proud to say we started it somewhere in 1910s. 73 means best of regards. See you on the air means I hope to hear you on my radio. DE is this is, like, just imagine if you had to type, if you had to send by Morse, THIS, this is. So we just have a word DE, which is French. And as I said, this is an international hobby. And it's also, this is my call sign, VU2BGS. My handle or my name is Kumar. And that's never going to be the full name. It'll be a short name, like maybe Tarun. Then it's my full name. I'm from Bangalore. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I will be very glad to help yourselves and the children, the school, on how to go about setting up a small radio station. And imagine the thrill of the children. You give them, I tell you, I can almost throw in a challenge. You give them an iPhone, they are very happy, but you show them a radio and you say, look, you can talk to somebody else who is 5 kilometers away. They are thrilled. Even at this stage, they are thrilled. They said something amazing. So it's very easy to inculcate this habit, and it also brings in some amount of discipline, a sense of belonging with each other, helping the others in need. So it's a wonderful thing to be prepared, and this is a great boon for emergency communication. So now I would be very happy if you can also communicate. It was one way so far, so please communicate and ask me questions. I'll be very happy to answer you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gajendra ji.
Thank you.
We understood the importance of communication and you explained it very well.
Thank you.
At this point of time, we have near about to 3,500 school on our platform.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, across India. And actually, we made their disaster management plan, a school disaster management plan. So we made a communication team in that disaster management plan. So just I wanted to add this point. And one another thing we did, we partner with the Community Radio Association of India.
Yes.
So near about 200, 500, 250 community radio in India, and we associated with them for the purpose of communication. So at this point of time, we are doing DRR activity. We are not involved in response. So we are using radio for the mitigation purpose. So these are the point I want to raise here. Thank you.
Yes. So one small suggestion: the community radio is fixed. It also requires an infrastructure. Maybe it is on FM. You require a tower. You require a transmitter. You require a studio. And it's one way. Yes, it's good to broadcast. Yes, flood is coming or the winds are blowing this side, but it's also good to hear. You also have an interaction. You also get to know from the man on the spot what's happening. So this is something where I can also help you and your organization better the communication method. Thank you, Mr. Tarun.
Thank you, Gajan sir. We have also organized a program, a curtain raising webinar on 26th June last. So this was based on the role of community radio and DRR about which the Nakul Tarun sir was discussing. So your inputs will be highly valuable in our coming programs because we are planning a range of programs by involving the community radio and ham as well, so that this DRR activities can be flawlessly delivered to the last man standing in the row. So
yes,
your inputs will be highly valuable, sir. We will
sure,
looking forward.
We will in touch, Gajendra ji. We will in touch.
Very nice. Thank you.
And communication is also the emergency support function number one. First emergency support function, as you know, you explained in your slides as well. So thank you, sir. So Arupdar sir, because of some time constraint, I would like to invite Shri Ashish Panda sir first, because he has some engagement there. So Ashish Panda sir, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Kindly allow me this permission to present my presentation, sir. Please.
Ashish sir is it's
धर्मवीर जी, please मुझे permission दीजिएगा share का.
Gajen ji.
Yes, please.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I got it.
Ashish Panda ji.
Ji.
I think you don't require any permission. You are the owner of network.
No, sir, I required. I got it. Thank you.
And meanwhile, when sir is sharing the permission, sir is sharing the presentation, I would like to let you know that the feedback will be shared at the end of the program on the chat box, as well as the WhatsApp link that I have shared on the chat box. You can join the WhatsApp group So in case if anyone not get the feedback link here, then he can get the feedback link on the WhatsApp. So link I have already put on the chat box.
Acha, Avdeji, can you see the presentation full mode?
Yeah, sir. I can
Yes.
see. I can see
And
that.
I am audible properly?
Right, will perfectly.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Due to paucity of time, I won't take much time, and in the next 10, 12 slides, in 15 minutes time, I will cover the point that I wanted to mention with respect to safer learning environment for students, especially in the times of this pandemic. So thank you, Gary sir, for wonderfully covering the entire gamut of what should be the school disaster management plan across the globe and how it should be prepared and implemented. And also thanks to Gajan Saab that communication becomes the first fatality in any kind of disaster. So definitely we should go for amateur radios, and if we can implant these radios in all the school premises and buildings, nothing better than that. So thank you so much to wonderful speakers before me. I will talk about especially in the context of this pandemic, and we are living in a new normal kind of a situation. And my say is that this online education, that new normals, that is never going to replace the offline mode of education, this face-to-face kind of this education. And definitely, as Nakul sir rightly mentioned, that as soon as possible, as Gary sir also mentioned, that we have to open up the schools because it is not only a center for imparting education, but also it develops the overall persona of a student. And I also believe that schools will not only be the centers of imparting education, but can be, as we can put this amateur radio kind of things in the school premises, it can be centers of excellence with respect to disaster risk reduction in any part of country across the globe. If we see this pandemic, it has affected each and everybody like anything. Just yesterday's information, more than 4 million people that fatalities we have observed across the globe. Superpowers like America, Europe, and other countries, they have been bored against this SARS virus and things like that. Similarly, students, our children, they have also faced all these things. They have observed healthcare shortcomings as far as India is concerned, elsewhere also, but especially in the context of India, we have observed the continuity of existing healthcare and mental health care services, shortcomings, lack of hospital beds, lack of oxygen supplies and things like that, lack of essential drugs. Then the students have to observe the losses of the lives around them, their near dear, their family members. If not the loss of life, then they have seen the patients in their own families and things like that. The people have to go to 14 days, 15 days quarantine and take medication, and the kind of medical conditions they have seen the patients, the mental trauma that has gone inside them, that is a very important aspect. Also in this new normals, because of closure of industries and other things, the private sector has been impacted like anything. They have observed the loss of livelihood of their family members, and they have to face the hardships with respect to continuation of their education with regard to paying of fees timely, and some other necessities with respect to finances and economies. Then schools and colleges have been closed like anything. They can't meet their peer groups, they can't have play times. We are stopping them to remain confined in the houses. There's no recreation for them. And digital divide is a very important aspect as far as my country, India, is concerned. 36% population of these children only have this smart gadgets like laptops and mobiles. So to talk about continuation of education in this new normals, when we can't provide gadgets to our students, that is a very important aspect. Then when students get confined inside the houses, they might be facing domestic violence kind of situations. Some of the youth, 13, 14, 15-year age youth, they go for substance abuse, go for drug abuse and things like that. Depression, suicidal kind of this tendencies comes to their mind. One UN report says that out of 5 students that commit suicide, 3 have definitely given clear signs to what is going inside them, but the near dears, the students, the teachers, they couldn't read those signs. If we can proactively read those signs, then probably we will be in a position to save our students from committing suicides. So there are disadvantaged sections also in the student community. They may be chronically ill, they may be already undergoing some kinds of medication with their illness, with some kinds of medical health services. So in this times of this pandemic, this comorbid cases have suffered like anything, because most of the hospitals, most of this medical health care facility centers have been turned into COVID care centers. So these comorbid cases, especially in the students class, who need continuity of healthcare services, who need continuity of mental health care services. They are suffering like anything. So we have to keep these things in mind when we are going to reopen the schools with respect to providing safer education in the times of this pandemic. So why safe in-person school is important, right? I mentioned just now that this online education can never replace the offline education, because schools is a place that doesn't only impart the education, that curriculum kind of thing, but also improves the overall persona development of the students. So they provide other than academic services also to the children and this adolescents. In addition to reading, writing, and the curriculum activities, the students also learn social emotional skills. Their exercise they get opportunity to undergo there. They have access to mental health and other support services. They meet their peer groups also. They share their experiences and things like that. For many families in our country, India also, this midday meal scheme is there. So poor children who belong to this poor sections of our society, downtrodden section of our society, they get nutritional valued food items in the schools in that midday meal scheme things. But when the schools have stopped, they are not getting those kinds of healthy meals and things like that. So this is also one reason why schools need to be started again and again. So pandemic has been especially hard for children who are having some disabilities kind of thing, who are having some medical attention and psychosocial care and mental health care services need kind of situations, and then students who are who belong to the community who is in the below poverty level, that line. One survey says that 59% of the parents with lower incomes in my country, the children would be facing at least one of the three obstacles with respect to digital learning. They can be having obstacle with respect to lack of reliable internet, rightly mentioned by Nakul sir. They might not be having computers at home. They might not be having smart gadgets like smartphones and things like that. One UN report says that the global coronavirus has impacted no less than 1.5 billion students, which has reflected around 80% of the global student population. 89% of the universities, colleges, and school principals, they think that their entire institution's financial future is at jeopardy, because in most of the cases, they are not getting the routine way, that fee structure on monthly basis. That is one aspect. Then education institutes are forced to go for online media to deliver education, but not all the students, not all the teachers, even in some of the cases, they are having this gadgets and internet kind of facilities. COVID-19 crisis has also exposed education on a digital divide. One report says that according to United Nations, 3 billion people across the globe have no internet access. So how we are going to impart education in these times of this pandemic? 92% of the university presidents are most concerned with respect to not only the healthcare aspects of the students, but also their staffs, their teachers, and things like that. So these are the concerns I wanted to mention here, which needs to be given important prime focus when we are going to start our schools. This third wave that we have heard, that one report says that by probably August end or by the beginning of the September, probably we might be having the third wave for this pandemic. So this mass vaccination of children is very, very important. Until unless we do that, the parents will be very apprehensive to send their children to the schools. So because of this possibility of this third wave, which says that probably it is going to impact the younger generation, the age group of that 12 to 18 kind of scenario. No scientific background with respect to that, but the way the first wave and second wave has behaved, probably this might come true, and we have to prepare ourselves with respect to our preparedness for the third wave of the pandemic. Parents need to be taken into confidence for school opening. There should be a gathering of school administration people. There should be gathering of teachers and parents put together so that they can go for possible viable solutions how to open safer schools. And it requires multi-stakeholder participatory approach also. Administrative people, staff people, faculties, teachers, parents, students, and also think tanks like this Zone for Solution. It is working very nicely in the field of this school education, and then organizations which are coming forward to help. So we have to bring all these parties together to talk about bringing safe school opening kind of scenario. We have to also develop some models so that it will interest upon new kind of confidence in the parents, new kind of confidence in the school teachers, administration, and also students community, so that they will be willing to come forward to join schools. Digital divide has to be tapped, and viable solutions has to be provided. and that transparency in our conduct and inclusivity, all sections of the society, students with disabilities, students from the very poor sections of our society, they have to include it while imparting education with respect to that. Also, in the schools, the healthcare infrastructure has to be developed so that when the students are coming to the school, they're very confident that yes, if something happens, we will be given proper attention, we will be taken care of. As far as school safety is concerned, then most of the parts has been covered by Gary sir, but these are some important aspects. Vaccination was foremost important thing. One uses there this one vaccine from this Britain that is probably suitable to the students, and it is going to come to our country also by the end of this August. So probably we will be in a position to provide vaccination to all the students before we are going to open the schools. Then the important guidelines that has been provided by the government, like safe distancing, wearing masks, hand sanitization often. So these facilities should be provided in the school so that the parents will be more welcoming these kinds of sending their students their children to the schools. Then classroom routines should be well defined. There should be no hallway crowd. There should be the students should be allowed lunch at their desks. The doors should always be kept open, so there won't be any opportunity of touching doors more often. Ventilation is very, very important. If the air doesn't pass into these rooms, so there is more probability of getting infected with respect to the SARS virus. Screening testing is very important for those students who have not been vaccinated as yet, and if we are observing some kinds of symptoms in the student, then we should provide diagnostic testing to the student then and there in the school itself. Temperature check, very normal. It can be done at the family before sending to the schools and in the schools as well. That is very, very common. And if the students are getting some exposure to some COVID virus, if some of their relatives has been exposed, have come positive with respect to this coronavirus, then we can provide quarantine facilities to the students in their families, and kind of guidelines that needs to be provided to the students at that time. The nurses that are available in the schools, they have to wear PPE kits and take other safety measures so that confidence building will be more. Then cleaning, disinfecting, then maintaining hygiene in those areas, proper ventilation in the rooms and things like that. The buses they fly in, the hallways they use, the playground they are going to use in the schools, they should be kept in proper disinfecting fashion, and all the care that has been provided in the guidelines needs to be followed by the students as well as the teacher community and the administration over there. Other than these safety plans, these are some important aspects. There will be some disadvantaged sections in the students itself. There will be students having chronic illnesses. There will be having some mental care assistance need students. So students will be having disabilities. So we can go for individualized education program. This is called IEP. So those students have to be identified, and accordingly, face-to-face education should be provided on individual basis to the maximum extent possible. Now, this is Corona time. I mentioned that most of the hospitals have been turned into COVID care centers. But this basic immunization that is required for students, our children, that should not be stopped at all. The regular flu vaccines that they need over the years till the age of 12, that should not be stopped at all. So this should be monitored in the schools. Wellness exams on yearly basis, half yearly basis, that was a routine before this pandemic, that should not at all be stopped, and students, teachers and this administration, they should come forward to help the students in this regard. Now, if we talk about the behavioral health and emotional support, the psychosocial care and mental health will be being steps. Bullying is a very important aspect in the schools. Why most of the students, they don't want to go to the schools because of this bullying aspect, and some of the students even commit suicide with respect to that. This is a very important aspect where we, in the next slide, I will mention that. Then if students hello, I request everybody to kindly mute their mics. Thank you so much. If the student is grieving himself or herself because of the loss of some family members, or he is giving for some even the pet has died, or some other losses and things like that, so special attention to these kinds of kids, that is very, very important. Society is very important aspect, and we have to see for signs, those signs which tell us that this particular kid is undergoing some kind of mental trauma, stress and distress kind of situation. So if we identify these kinds of situations timely, so probably we'll be in a better position to provide those kinds of services to the affected student community. Then organized activity, extracurricular activities, keeping safe distance and wearing masks and sanitizer and things like that, that can be arranged so that they're opening up of their persona, that will be helped like anything. Then vision and hearing screening, that is very, very important. Some students go through vision impairment, then hearing impairment, so that should be identified, and accordingly some measures should be provided so that they get proper education in the schools. Nutrition, I mentioned midday meal schemes, as far as India is concerned, that should be restarted so that nutritional value of this food that can be provided to students timely. One survey was done with the students, what students basically want, what should they want in the schools with respect to psychosocial care and mental health services. So topmost priority is they want anti-bullying systems in the schools, because this is one important worrying area in the schools that should be worked upon. Then the next important aspect, they mentioned that social and emotional skill development, that should be in their curriculum, in the lessons that they study. There should not be separate classes with respect to that. We can prepare this curriculum in such a fashion that socially and emotionally we develop the skills of our students. Then also the creative or physical activity should be part and parcel of our education systems. Then external mental health specialists should be there in the school itself. Psychologists and psychiatrists should be there to help to identify those individuals with mental health difficulties and things like that. So on and so forth, many facilities students want in the school. So as far as bullying is concerned, schools should come up with prevention programs. They should encourage students and teachers to report bullying behaviors. There should be meetings with the parents so that some conflict resolution strategies can be developed and plans can be implemented effectively so that we can discipline the bullies. Importantly, then we have to educate students on bullying effects and other these kinds of services that can be provided in schools. We shouldn't forget the fact that those students who undergo this bullying kind of situations, they are 4.8 times more prone to getting depression in their lifetime. They are 4.3 more prone to getting anxiety in their lifetime in future, and 18.5 more prone to committing suicide if it is not properly reported and action not properly taken in the times of they are getting impacted with respect to these kinds of behavioral disaster I would mention in the schools. 3-4 important aspects, and that would be end of my presentation. Mobile exposure, that has been too early, if I can mention. Forget about this pandemic, forget about any disaster, but in this 21st century, what we are observing, we are living in a very macro family, husband, wife, 1 or 2 children. So what we are doing, we are too busy to attend to our children, so we are providing them smart gadgets, laptops and mobiles. Once they enter this mobile, they are entering one window where there is darkness across that window. They might be having positive information from the mobile and laptops, but there is more probability of getting negative informations and kind of situations where it might affect their persona, their psyche, like anything. One example I can quote, just 2 days before this news, one 12-year-old kid, he spent 3.2 lakhs Indian rupees from her mother's account. His mother is a teacher, to buy online game arms and ammunitions without knowledge of his mother. His mother reported this as a some kind of online fraud and things like that. But when this police entered their house and when they inquired about all these things, this very aspect came to open. So our this misguided innocence, the innocence of the student that has been misguided with respect to too much exposure of this mobile facility to our students. So that is a very important caution area that we have to think upon when we are sending. That is why this is one important aspect why schools need to be open. In this pandemic time, this has been very mandatory that there is no other option. They have to go for their mobiles with respect to attending their classes. And whenever we can ask our children what you are doing in the mobile, they can very well answer that I am attending the classes and things like that. The right hand side diagram, if you see a 5-year-old kid, a 10-year-old kid and an adult, how these frequencies of mobile that affects our brain. This scenario shows how dangerous mobiles are to our brains and things like that. So to maximum extent possible, we have to keep our students, our children away from mobiles. bare minimum that exposure time should be there with respect to that. This charm of this internet, the never-ending dark horizons of online games. You must have heard blue whales and this PUBG and things like that, where some of the students community, this young youth people, they died attempting some games and things like that. They are very early, they're exposed to romance and porn sites, and sometimes there's online frauds and things like that. In some of the cases, though minor in number, but they are also attuned to or exposed to terrorism and destructive influences, drugs and alcohol and things like that through this mobile connectivity. So negative impact on physicality also. It impacts our eyes, impacts our fingers, it impacts our neck, the way we sit, our back, our postures, body postures, and also it impacts our overall mental well-being of our children and student community also. So that is why I say school can come up as a remedy to keep children safe from mobile exposure. Face-to-face education is always better than online education. As far as my country is concerned, we have observed lots of deaths with respect to those children who have lost both parents, I mean mother and father both. So these children need to be identified, especially their special needs, how their future can be secured, how their education can be secured, and some advertisement we observe in our Indian newspapers and electronic and print media. Adoption posts are there, but basically they are illegal. If at all anybody wants to adopt, then any child, any such child, he has to go for Justice Juvenile Act 2015 of India, which prohibits offering or receiving children outside the processes that has been specifically laid down in the act. So these kinds of activities need to be observed very carefully. Otherwise, this human trafficking is going to increase like anything in any post-disaster scenario. Forget about pandemic. The Ministry of Women and Child Development in our country has written to states on measures related to rehabilitation of such orphan children to ensure safety and avoid human trafficking. It has also requested the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, when you go to hospital, when you go for a hospital admission, the patients, COVID patients, they have to sign add another column with respect to that. In case of any fatality of parents, to whom the children should be handed over, so that future of the children can be secure. There is one central adoption resource authority in our country which regulates adoption of orphans, surrendered and abandoned children. So we have to skill recognition, to what scale these kinds of orphan cases are there in our country. We have to observe that, then avoid delays in identification processes, and also go for transparent processes to adopt these kind of children. And schools are very important aspects who can help identify these kind of students. They can also help focus sensitivity on vulnerable children who need trauma redressal, who need safe and secure future. So schools are very, very important. That is why schools need to be open. Assessment system. In this new normal things, when we have stopped taking exams, we have changed the syllabus also. 30% syllabus has been reduced in my country. So there's a specific need of alternate assessment mechanisms. Most of the students are not happy with the new kind of this assessment, where the whole year unit test results and half yearly exam results are taken care of with respect to providing the overall percentage to a student who has passed the year without even appearing in the examination. So we need a robust alternate assessment mechanism in our country, which yields results not only in the normal times but also in exigency times of like this biological disaster of this pandemic. So one can, though with one great saying says that one can, though with great difficulty, defy the effects of bad teaching. If you are facing bad teaching, but probably with your own efforts you can be a good student and result into a good result as far as your career is concerned. But it is very, very difficult to escape the impact of bad assessment. If you've undergone some bad assessment kind of aspect, then it is very difficult to come out of that. That goes like a popular saying. So having said that, this cyclic phases of closure and opening, probably this third wave is coming, then fourth wave might come. So we have to open schools, then we have to close the schools and things like that. So probably we have to adhere to hybrid kind of learning. There will be a mix of face-to-face learning, mix of online learning and things like that. And accordingly, assessment system has to be developed so that we can have regular in-house exams, we can have communication ability, some exams and things like that. We can develop our students with respect to critical thinking, creativity development, ability to use knowledge of problem solving, collaborative and social citizen skills and things like that. So our student can undergo this assessment techniques that is sequential, that is continuous, that never gets stopped entire the year. So real life applications can be added to that. Case study based study programs can be developed, open book testing, multiple choice questions, research and project based learning that should be developed with respect to students in this new normal kind of this education whenever we are going to open schools in the near future. We have recently had this National Education Policy 2020 in my country, where this provisions of regular formative assessment is there, where this we go for conceptual clarity, we go for analytical ability, critical thinking, competence, and things like that. Earlier, there used to be board exams only in the class 10th and 12th, and now we are going for class 3, class 5, and class 8, that monitoring this assessment, special assessment, and things like that. Like new normal, we have come up with two board exams for the class 10th in a year. So half of the portion of that syllabus will be covered in the first board examination in 6 months time, and second half of the portion of that syllabus will be covered in the second half of that examination. God forbid, if the schools are again asked to be closed, then probably that first half and that board examination will become a tool to identify how we assess our students in the entire year with respect to that. This new education policy 2020 also has one national assessment center, Parak. So this is going to be implemented very soon in my country. Last two slides. Parents are very apprehensive with respect to how to open a school, how to go about it. So they might be having lots of queries, lots of questions. So school administration should prepare themselves how to answer their queries and things like that. Some of the questions might be, have the teachers and staff been vaccinated? What changes have been made to classrooms, hallways, cafeterias, and buses to ensure social distancing? Whether hand washing opportunities will be frequent and the facilities are there in your school or not? Have training services been increased, and how often will this high touch surfaces been disinfected and things like that? So many questions will be there, and schools will have to prepare themselves with respect to identify these questions and ready to answer these queries to parents in a satisfying and illustrative manner. Parents would like to even visit the schools before their student, their wards, their child goes to school. So schools should be ready and forthcoming and very much willing to work with parents with respect to doing away all these kinds of apprehension and queries. Last but not the least, yes, yesterday it was Guru Purnima in my country, and we observe this day as paying our homage, paying our great respect to the teachers that inculcate great knowledge in ourselves, and they shape our futures and things like that. So having said that, teachers are very important aspect if we want to continue education and open our schools and things like that. In this new normal, even the teachers are facing problems with respect to that. When we ask them to work from home, it is not a 9 to 5 job or 7 to 2 job. It is 24/7 job. I mean, they are always on their laptops. They have their own families also. God forbid, they might be facing COVID. They might have seen fatalities in their home also with respect to this COVID patients, some near dears and things like that. So we have to be very practical with respect to providing mental health care services, psychosocial care health services to even teachers, and also equip them with respect to how to use modern technology. Many of the teachers might not be knowing how to use smartphones, how to run these kinds of ongoing this programs and things like that. So this is very important. So they have to manage their home, they have to work from home, they have added responsibilities and things like that, especially the women teachers. So technology restrictions, we have to provide all kinds of solutions. Then timely payment in the private sector, when the students are not paying the fee to the schools, then schools are not paying timely their salaries and facilities to the teachers also. So we have to find a viable solution with respect to that. We have to provide them training with respect to coping with new study curriculums, new teaching paradigm shift, and also participatory approach should be there. When we plan, we should involve the teachers with respect to how to have a very robust kind of resilient kind of school disaster management plan. We have to take all the expertise that teachers might offer. There should be more parent teacher meeting, there should be lessening workload, and there should be cordial atmosphere of working with respect to how teacher should be respected, how the administration, school administration had to respect the teachers and provide them some conducive kind of environment with respect to how they function and how they provide services to the students with respect to continuum of education in the times of this new normals of this pandemic. So last slide, thanks for this passionate listening. Last message is schools are very safe very, very stimulating and enriching places for children and teens to learn. And we have to only prepare one important disaster management plan so that it can withstand not only any kind of disaster, but also disasters like this pandemics, and also the families, the schools and communities, they should work together. This is multi-hazard time, multi-stakeholder approach has to be adopted so that we help each other, we help students, and we sort out these apprehensions of the parents so that they send their children to the school. Students are willing to come to the schools, and the teachers are in a very conducive environment to provide this continuum of education. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you.
Thank you, Panda Saab. You put it things in very well manner. I will say whatever was left by our earlier speaker uh, is compensated now. Just I want to add one element. I think even our teachers are not trained to teach online.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, so this is the biggest disadvantage even for those students who are already getting the online education, and even learning materials are not made according to online education. Basically, they were made for the physical education like books and notebooks, and we are using them, clicking a picture by our WhatsApp camera and send to the student. So this is, I think this is also a point for the discussion. And one point more, you raised it very well. Only not for the school. I think its parents should also take up with the school. They should ask school, uh, like closure of a school not make your school safe. So what you did for the making the school safe? Did you make your school disaster management plan? Not only disaster management plan, they should ask, did you make your disaster management plan through a qualified disaster manager? Because you understand, if um, if your health certificate made by a driver, obviously it will it will be null and void. So not only a disaster management plan, it must be a operational disaster management plan signed by some a qualified disaster manager. I mean, he should take responsibility. He has made it, and it must be submitted to district disaster management authority, because if your authority will not aware about the hazard available in the school and the system you have developed, then how they will help you in case of emergency? So I think I thought these points will jail all three speakers. That's why I put it in between. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish sir. It was enlightening one. Though we have network challenge.
Anupji, please invite next speaker.
Thank you, Ashish sir, once again.
Thank you. Thank you, Arup.
Hear from all of us, enlightening one. Stay tuned with us and definitely get your blessings so that we can go ahead with more sessions. So, ladies and gentlemen, now we have Ambassador Saad Umar Farooq from Abuja, Nigeria. One of my best friends who very often work together. Let me give a small brief about Saad Umar Farooq. He is an assistant chief dental technologist, certified professional disaster manager, certified ethical hacker, member association of dental tech of disaster management without border, fellow client Nigeria, member Nigerian OC Integration Mental Anthology Society, member International Institute of Professional Safety Association, Global Peace, Intelligence and Peace, Associate Counter-Terrorism Authority of USA, and a computer engineer, networking system expert, website developer, and desktop publisher.
management over 3 decades, experiencing in military service, member special force, and very often he's also a great Nigerian actor. So I welcome Ambassador Saad Umar Farooq for his presentation. And sir, sorry to say that we'll allow you only 20 minutes because we have three more speakers are there waiting on the queue. So you are welcome on board, sir. And I request Avnish sir to help him with sharing this so that he can go PowerPoint.
Thank you very much, sir. While I wait for the share button to be enabled for me, I will not fail to thank the organizers of this training program, the Zone 4 Solution, and all Tripura Disaster Response Volunteers India, and the very, very versatile presenters who presented before me. And I also will not forget my respectable participants who is on this platform. I want to I want to observe the protocol that is already laid while waiting for the share button to be enabled for me to share my presentation. And I'm going to be a little bit of marathon, so you people should bear with me because those who presented before me have touched some, not all, of what I intend to say. So where they have elaborately discussed, I think there is no need for repetition. So bear with me, we're going to go on a little bit marathon because the business of a day is a source of concern for me. Because in my own part of the world, we are suffering from a disaster also. I can say man-made disaster that affects the school environment. That is insecurity, kidnapping for ransom. Those are the challenges we are facing in my country today. So this is a very, very good platform for me to be here, to be. So I'm still waiting patiently for the share button to be enabled. So that the business of the day will commence. I know there's time constraint, but it's a very good opportunity, and I really thank each and every one of you here. So I'm still patiently, as a disaster manager, you must be very, very patient. So I'm still patiently waiting for the share button to be activated for me. Because one good quality of a disaster manager is patience. You have to be very, very patient. So let me still be discussing what I intend to discuss. I'm still waiting for the paper. I'm really going to talk about disaster risk reduction because all of us that are here are witness that disasters cannot be eliminated. No way. That is why we have the natural and the man-made disaster. So the only option we have is to see how we can reduce the risk that are available. Where possible, we eliminate them. Because it's not, there are some certain risks we cannot eliminate, we can only reduce them. So like a paradigm shift from being reactive to disasters to be proactive. That is thinking ahead and working ahead so that the number of casualties may be less in a situation where it happens. Because the traditional way of disaster management is we wait for it to happen, we respond. Despite the fact we plan, we do everything, but we always wait to respond. So this paradigm shift, we want to think of how to be proactive so that in a situation where we have the opportunity, we don't allow it to happen. But where we don't, when it happens or it strikes, we are going to have less casualty. So I'm still waiting patiently for the share voting. I hope I'm loud and clear, sir. Am I loud and clear?
Sir, you are loud and clear.
Loud and clear,
Okay.
sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I'm just still waiting for the share voting. Hello, Ambassador. Hello.
Yes, you please carry on. You please carry on.
Anyhow.
Can you just
Please carry on. Please go ahead.
Okay, but the share voting is not on.
Hello.
The share voting is not activated. Yes, sir.
Abhezi,
Unless if I can go on my I can go on with my presentation without it being displayed on the screen for people to see. You know, we are disaster managers. No threat can threaten us. There is always a way out. So in a situation where maybe there is difficulty in enabling the share voting, maybe I can go on with my presentation without it being displayed on the screen, because I wanted to carry each and every one of you with my presentation. So Ambassador Aru, what is your suggestion? Can I go on? Because time is running out fast, and it is very, very important when it comes to time management as disaster managers and professionals. We have to be very, very disciplined. Though we are still patient, but I really need to start because of the time.
Can go ahead. Between link will be definitely here so that you can share the screen. So time is running out, please.
Okay. So please, when the link, because once I'm on with the PowerPoint presentation, I cannot be able to see whether it is the button is on or off. So maybe you can call my
hello. I think he is disconnected. So please, Anup, please, meanwhile, please invite some next speaker. Meanwhile, he will get connected. Anup,
Yes, yes. Yes, I'm doing it.
please ask next. Please invite next speaker.
Yes, we have next invited.
I need
Mr. Abdesh, are you online?
So his subject discussion is on action point for stakeholder. So Gautam Shukla Vaidyaji, can come up with your presentation, please.
hello, I say Ambassador, can I continue? Somebody removed me, but I am back. Thank God I'm back. I have managed the disaster. Can I continue, please, without sharing the slide? Because up to now, the share button is not on.
Can go, sir, only by 20 minutes.
I didn't get you loud and clear. Say again.
Just finish it up.
Do you want?
Okay, the share button is on now.
Please go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anudhar, please.
Yes. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, but please, yes. Now your screen is visible, but please make it small and fast, please.
No problem, no problem. Once I are visible, there is no problem for that, sir. So, as I said, I'm going to talk about the awareness, that is a paper presented, disaster risk reduction, a paper presented at one day sensitization and awareness online webinar of the school safe programs for stakeholders, as organized by Zone 4 Solution with All Tripura Disaster Response Volunteers Association of India. I remain Ambassador Saad Umar Farouk. Introduction. Natural disasters and other emergencies can happen anytime, and when they happen at school, everyone should be prepared to handle them safely and effectively. Administrators, teachers, staff, parents, and students can work together to promote and maintain school-wide safety and minimize the effects of emergencies and other dangerous situations. This lecture covers different ways everyone in the school community and other stakeholders can prepare for various natural disasters and other emergencies to stay safe. Now, these are the scope of what I really, as I said, is disaster risk reduction I want to emphasize. So I'm going to look at what is hazard, exposure, vulnerability, capacity, risk, and disaster. Now, this is the scope of my presentation. Preparedness, new framework of disaster risk reduction management, strengthening disaster risk reduction, emergency disaster oriented Operation Center, situational issues and incident management. Now, let me start with the hazard definition of terms. Hazard, it is a dangerous phenomenon, substance, human activity, or condition that may cause loss of life, injury, or other health impacts, property damage, loss of livelihood and services, social and economic disruption, or environmental damage. Could be a potentially damaging phenomenon. It could be natural or human-induced. Exposure. This is the degree to which the element. Am I loud and clear? Hello? Hello?
You are loud and clear, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The exposure, I said the degree to which the element and risks are likely to experience hazard events of different. Hello? Then vulnerability. I say there are circumstances of a community system or asset that make a susceptible to the damaging effects of a hazard. This may arise from various physical, social, economic, and environmental factors. Now, vulnerability has been related to the following factors: social integration, like ethnicity, age, gender, location, status, wealth, income, education, and family. It can also be related to psychological and physiological factors, like locus of control, disability, coping style, individual's perception, lifestyle, agility, mobility, and experience. Now, capacity. Capacity is a combination of all the strengths and resources available within a community, society, or organization that can reduce the level of risk or the effects of disaster. Capacity may include physical, institutional, social, or economic needs, as well as skilled personnel or collective attributes such as leadership and management. Capacity may also be described as capability. Now, risk. Risk is the combination of probability of an event to happen and its negative consequences. That is why you see the formula. Risk equals to hazard multiplied by vulnerability over the capacity. Now, disaster rectifiers and remedies. Disaster is a natural or man-made, that is technological hazard, resulting in an event of substantial extent causing significant physical damage or destruction, loss of life, or drastic change to the environment. A disaster can be ostensibly defined as any tragic event stemming from events such as earthquakes, flood, catastrophic accidents, fire, etc. It is a phenomenon that damage to life and property and destroy the economic, social, and cultural life of people. In contemporary academia, disasters are seen as a consequence of inappropriate managed risk. These risks are the product of combination of both hazard and vulnerability. Hazards that strike in areas with low vulnerability will never become disasters, as is the case in inhabited region. So that is why we want to ensure that our school environment has less vulnerability. Now, natural disaster. A natural disaster is consequent when a natural hazard affects humans and or built environment. Human vulnerability, lack of appropriate emergency management leads to financial, environmental, or human impact. The resulting loss depends on the capacity of population to support or resist the disaster, their resilience. Which is their resilience. So it's the resilience now we want to talk about on our school environment. This understanding is concentrated in formulation. Disaster occurs when hazards meet vulnerability. A natural hazard will hence never result in natural disasters in areas without vulnerability. Now, man-made disaster or induced. As a man-made disasters are the consequence of technological or human hazards. Example includes stampedes, fires, transport accident, industrial accident, oil spill, etc., etc. War, deliberate attacks may also be put in the category as with natural hazard. Man-made hazards are events that have not happened. For instance, terrorism. Man-made disasters are examples of specific cases where man-made hazards have become reality in an event. Now, when is an event referred to as a disaster? At least when 20% of population are affected and in the need of emergency assistance, or those dwelling units have been destroyed. 2, great number or at least 40% of means of livelihood, such as financial institutions, fishing boats, vehicles, and the like are destroyed. Major roads and bridges are destroyed and impassable for at least a week, thus disrupting the flow of transport and commerce. 4, widespread destruction of fish ponds, crops, poultry, livestock, etc., and other agriculture and epidemics, just like the COVID-19. Now, why are disaster impacts increasing? Why are they increasing? 1, we have increase in population globally. 2, climate change. 3, increased vulnerability due to 1, demographic changes. 2, increased concentration of assets. 3, environmental degradation. 4, poverty. 5, rapid urbanization and unplanned development. Now, preparedness. Preparedness is a personal responsibility. So each and every one of us that are here, we have to take it as a personal responsibility to prepare for any unforeseen circumstances, such as disasters. Now, how can we make the difference? 1, we change our attitude by being proactive than being reactive. Then 2, we have to identify the hazards, know them. Then we do something to minimize the hazards. If possible, eliminate them. Now, what if disaster strikes? Are we prepared? I want each and every one of us to look inward and answer this question. Now, there are critical concerns. Does your school have an existing disaster response team or safety community? If yes, is it functional? If it is functional, work on it. Do we conduct emergency disaster drills regularly? If no, we have to start right now. If yes, improve on it. Do we have emergency response plan? If yes, improve on it. If no, start one right ahead. 5, do we have preparedness contingency plan in event of any disaster? If yes, let's improve on it. Let's start one right now. Are there personnel, employees, students trained in first aid, firefighting, or rescue? If no, we have to start right now. If yes, we must improve on it. Does the school have any rescue equipment and other emergency paraphernalia, that is equipment that is in relation of emergency? If yes, let's look for how to improve them. If no, we must get them right now. Do we have an institutionalized warning system installed in your schools? If yes, improve it? If no, start one right ahead. Are there identified evacuation areas within premises of the school in case of any disaster? If yes, improve on it. If no, create one now. Now, this is a preparedness cycle. You plan, organize, that is organization will include equipment. You train. Training is a continuous exercise. Then you exercise, you rehearse. Then after that, you evaluate yourself, improve where necessary. Then this is the 72-hour survival kit. This 72-hour survival kit is very, very important when it comes to disaster risk reduction, because there are some important things that you must have handy all the time, like a whistle, bottled water, cell phone for communication, or the amateur radio, as has been said by the previous presenter, battery operated radio, ready to eat food, emergency money, first aid kit, important documents, and the rest of them. So this 72-hour survival kit is very, very important. It must be included in our school disaster risk reduction plan. Now, risk reduction management, systematic process of using administrative decisions, organizations, operational skills and capacities to implement policies, strategies, and coping capacities of society and school communities. 2, setting of related goals and objectives in development and land use areas around the school's environment. It involves the formulation of strategies and plans, programs, and activities, PPAs. Now, what must be done to reduce risks in school? Because that is my main area of concern. How are we? Because we cannot eliminate them, but in the situation where we have the opportunity, we eliminate them. We institutionalize disaster risk reduction and management offices in all schools, either a team office, no matter what you want to call it, you must have one in your school. Establish a working early warning system in each school. Then formulation of communication protocol, it has been discussed here. Now, formulation of evacuation procedures at the school level and establishment. Each and every member of the school, both the students, teachers, non-teaching staff in the school, must know what to do at all the time before any disaster that may occur. Now, organize local disaster risk management committee and define functional roles and responsibility of members and task units. Each and every student, teacher that is in the school must know his tasks. He must be able to know what to do in case if there is any emergency. Then establish standard operating procedures. Then hazard awareness through schools-based training and seminars must be a continuous business. In continuation, I say integrate disaster risk reduction into comprehensive land use plan and land use planning when establishing schools. Right from the establishment of the school, you ensure that you incorporate land use plan. Then integrate hazard, risk, and vulnerability assessment into development plan. Then cluster approach or recovery program. Then good working relationship with warning agencies and local media. Installation of rain gauges, for example, within school premises. It is recommended that when 150 millimeters of rainfall observed within 24 hours, that is enough to trigger evacuation of students in high-risk area. Don't wait until the flooding starts before you start running helter-skelter. Now, strengthening schools' capabilities on disaster management. Updating the hazard profile of all schools to analyze data on human-induced disasters for public safety studies. Effective flow of communication system to ensure that accurate flow of information before, during, and after disasters. Now, risk reduction methods in the following order. 1, identify, characterize, and assess threats in and around all schools. 2, assess the vulnerability of the critical access to specific threats. 3, determine the risks, that is, the expected consequences of specific types of attacks on specific assets. 4, identify ways to reduce those risks. 5, prioritize risk reduction measures based on strategy. Now, potential risk treatment. Once risks have been identified and assessed, all techniques to manage the risk fall into one or more of these 4 major categories. 1, avoidance. That is to eliminate or withdraw from risk area, because question is one of the best way of risk reduction. Because if a disaster strikes and there is not any human being that is there. It can only damage the environment, and lives will be safe. Maybe the environment with the properties that are there. So avoidance, number one. Number two, reduction. That is optimize resources to mitigate effects. 3, sharing risk. That is sharing. Risk transfer or a role in insurance. Ensure that if you are building this thing, ensure that. Now, retention. Accept, plan, formulate contingency plan, evacuation plan, information communication system, and provision of budget. Because one area I want to overemphasize here is all these things we are talking about needs money. So we need to budget, support it with enough money so that we can be able to withstand any situation. Now, disaster risk management strategy for school. Comprehensive disaster risk management strategy for schools actively involving stakeholders, all the stakeholders at all levels of government as well as the private sector, local communities, and civil society is required to implement the legislative framework and to provide coordination and monitoring mechanisms and arrangements. School disaster risk reduction actions and programs need to be located within this strategy rather than treated as discrete, that is individual measures. Moreover, the strategy needs to indicate specific entry points and mechanisms for mainstreaming disaster risk reduction concerns in both broader development agenda and design and implementation of individual development initiatives. Now, disaster risk reduction guiding principles for schools. 1, it must be institutional, not personality oriented. 2, it must provide permanent solution, not temporary or palliative. 3, preemptive evacuation is better than rescue. Please, these 3 guiding principles, we should take it into consideration, because when you evacuate, when the disaster occurs, that with the base of the early warning system, at the end of the day, life will not be lost or it will be minimal. Now, disaster risk reduction paradigm shift. The enactment of school disaster risk reduction and management aims to achieve a paradigm shift from reactive to proactive approach in disaster risk reduction and management. One of the main objectives of disaster preparedness is to enhance the schools with necessary skills to cope with the negative impacts of disaster. The state of readiness of all stakeholders is greatly determined by the extent to which potential casualties and damages can be reduced to the barest minimum. This one is just the paradigm shift from the reactive to proactive. In the reactive traditional manner, we have emergency management. We wait for emergency to happen, we manage it. While in the proactive manner, we now have disaster risk management. We manage the risks, not the emergency now. Then in the traditional reactive manner, we have disaster response. When disaster occurs, we respond. But in this proactive manner, is disaster risk reduction. We reduce the risks so that even when the disaster will not be high on us. Then on the traditional reactive type of disaster management is emergency specialists and hazard scientists. While in the proactive disaster risk reduction, we have risk specialists, economic managers, and development planners. Now, emergency and disaster operations center. This one, let me just run because it deals with communication, though it is a central command and control facility responsible for carrying out all principles of functions of emergency and disaster preparedness and management at strategic level in an emergency situation, ensuring continuity of operation of company, political subdivision, and other organizations. An emergency or disaster operations center is responsible for strategic overview, that is the big picture of the disaster. Use the various ways at all levels of government and within the private industry to provide coordination, direction, control during emergencies. The common functions of the Emergency Disaster Operations Center is to collect, gather, and analyze data, make decisions that protect life and property, maintain continuity of the organization within the scope of applicable laws, and disseminate those decisions to all concerned agencies and individuals. In most emergency disaster operation centers, there is one individual in charge, that is the emergency disaster manager. My respectable participants and fellow facilitators, in any teamwork, if you want it to succeed, you must have a leader. A leader must be identified. So this is the summary of what the Disaster or Emergency Operations Center looks like. One, it brings together the vast aspect of situation monitoring, dissemination of warning, situation assessment and monitoring, then activation of responders, then coordination and communication, and the rest of them. Now, the activation. Hello, are we together? Now, understanding the color alert status and disaster warning. Notification. When an event or disaster occurs, notification is made to all partner agencies and disaster operations center support staff who need to take action. Hello. Hello, somebody is making noise, please.
Ambassador
Please,
Farooq.
somebody is making noise. Mute your mic, please. So then when we talk about the blue alert, it is a partial activation, an initial limited or a post-red alert scale before the main event happens. Red alert is full activation, where all primary, secondary support agencies of the Disaster Risk Reduction Management Committee are on active status on call. Then the activation, the disaster center chief, as may be directed by the chief executive or action officer, to deactivate the alert status and normal operations of the disaster operations center resumes. Now, that is what I've just explained. Red is full-scale activation. That means disaster is already imminent. So there must be full-scale activation. All stakeholders, all hands must be on deck. Now, the blue is partial activation. Maybe there is a warning, there is sign and symptoms that it is about to happen. So there will be blue activation, which is partial activation. Then the white activation remain 24/7 monitoring of all areas of responsibilities. Now, situational issues. Things to consider. In any major situation involving schools, there are three critical issues that usually arise, namely time constraint, 2, enormous needs, 3, coordination. Because as children, there will be no time. Time will be too short as at the time the disaster strikes. Then we need this, we need to move this, we need travel, so there is enormous needs. Then coordination, how do you coordinate them? But if they are trained from the beginning, each and every one of them can coordinate themselves. Then incident reporting and receiving. What to do? For example, here now, I, Ambassador Saad Umar Farooq, want to report a fire incident in Abuja, AYA. The address is AYA. Then by 10 to 27 on the 28th of July 2021. Then if there's any additional information, I'll give it. Then before I cut that call, I should verify to ensure that the receiver have gotten me clearly, because communication must be effective. Now, incident profiling. How to profile an incident. What? That is type of incident. 2, when, date, time, and occurrence. 3, where, estimated location. 3, why, probable cause of that incident. Then who, affected population and responding agencies in that area. How was the response carried out? Now, conclusion. Remember your dreams of being a champion or a superhero, that is as a father or as a teacher. You can save lives by engaging your students or children in disaster risk reduction learning. Communities all over the world have taught us that having the right knowledge, skills, and attitude to be prepared for, respond to, and recover from disasters can mean the difference between life and death. There's hardly a more rewarding role as a teacher or father or parent than working with your students or children to be able to do well when a disaster strikes and to make your school or family a safe place. Now, before I go, I want to leave you with the word of Michael Mabi. He said, and I quote, "We are not preparing for the world we live in. We are preparing for the world we find ourselves in." In his book, Prepping for a Suburban or Rural Community, Building a Civil Defense Plan for a Long-Term Catastrophe. Thank you very, very much for listening, and God bless you all abundantly.
To Ambassador Farooq, was a very wonderful, but due to constraint of time, we have missed a lot of things. But I do request you to kindly share your PowerPoint presentation. We can share to all of our fellow participants here. And thank you again for joining, and we hope to see you again so that we are much more very goodly enlightened and become a very perfect disaster manager. So thank you, and may God bless you also. And thank you for staying with us, and hope to get you in some more time. So now, without wasting any more time, we have with us Engineer Videsh Kumar ji, Assistant Professor, Department of Civil Engineering, in Bharatiya University, India, another invited panelist. So welcome, sir, on board. We are patiently to hear from you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you. Very good and very impactful voice, Ambassador sir, Farooq Sahab, you have, and I like the content very much that you were presented here. But due to the time constraints,
I want to just clarify with one line what Farooq Sahab said. Most of a school, not only in India, around the globe, or at least in Asia, they did a mock drill without having a plan. So this is the wrong practice actually. The right practice is first you have a plan, then you drill off that plan, and if you find any mistake, then improve those plan. So this should be the practice. So I thought this must be added with this wonderful speech of Mr. Farooq. That's why I add this. Please go ahead, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. And I would like to request first that kindly give me the sharing permission so that I can share my PPT, please.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. So I am going to be very brief, but it's a pertinent topic. That's why I'm sharing this slide with you. And it's basically something on which today's program is aimed to. School disaster management plan or concerned with the school safety, right? So there are certain pillars. We have a very wonderful speakers of international status, national. Guys covered a lots of things. Ashish sir then covered a number of things, especially in the Indian scenario. Then our Farooq Saab also covered a very good content in his presentation. The time was very brief, and same situation is in front of me as well. So let us discuss something that is related to the core or heart of this presentation, of this international webinar, that is school disaster management plan. So let me introduce first. My name is Videsh Kumar, and I'm Assistant Professor at Department of Civil Engineering in Bharatiya University, Bareilly, and I'm also the brand ambassador of school safety in UP and Uttarakhand state. And let's move ahead. So we know that there are the lots of number of disaster we are surrounded with, especially after the release of the report, CRED report at International Day of Disaster Risk Reduction, UN CRED report. So it reveals a picture that in each 20-year duration we are lodging a high increase or high pace in the frequency of the disaster. So that is itself a matter of worry. So we can say we have geophysical, hydrological, meteorological, climatological, biological, and extraterrestrial number of disaster we have. Though this type of kind of some classification we can understand for our convenience. Otherwise, there is a combination of disaster always struck. This is now new pattern. So this is called one disaster plus another disaster. So multiple disaster scenario is going to observe in all around the world. And when we talk about the risk reduction, so risk reduction, I would like to simply explain with this diagram. Don't think much about this. So this in the left hand side in the sky blue portion, you can see our aim, and this you can say this is displaying our objective. So our objective is to reduce the risk as low as it is possible, or if possible to zero. But you know that practically it is impossible to take the risk to the zero. That's why we have to go for the lower one. Now this figure you can see this trench, a small trench. Here you can see a width is high but depth is low. So high probability but low impact. If this person fall down in this trench, obviously there are the high possibility to fall down in this, but impact is going to be low. And in this you can see the trench width is low and depth is also low. So there is a low probability and low impacts. We not have to concern much about this. But in this you can see there is the width is low but the depth is high. When this person fall down in this, so there is a less chances of survival. So there's a low probability and high impact. Now this is the extreme situation. Here the risk is very high. Here the width is high, and you can see this spikes. They are the confirmation of death of any person who is going to fall in this, and depth is also high. So high probability, high impact. Now entire world and all the nation from wherever you have connected with this program, doesn't matter. They are concerned with this risk reduction, uh, uh, risk reduction aim. They are concerned with them. So we have to reduce the risk to as much as low as possible by mitigating this. So how it is possible? How we are going to achieve in different sectors? So how the sector that we have discussing today, it is the school. So for this resilience or risk reduction that I have explained in my previous slide, that we have to go down with the risk aspect and reduce the risk. We have launched 2 global risk reduction framework, that is global disaster resilience framework, build resilience of nations and community. The first framework we are from the disaster management fraternity, or the people who are new, who are connected with this webinar, so they can understand this 2005 and 2015 was a significant duration where HAGO framework of action was launched, in which the risk reduction was aimed by the by thinking the fact that the disaster risk reduction is not the responsibility of any one state, any one nation. It is the shared responsibility of all the people. So we have come together to for reducing the risk by joining hand in different corners of the world. After finishing of the HAGO framework, 2030, that is ongoing framework, Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction launch. And in this, India is also the signatory, my country is also the signatory. And there you can see the sustainable development goal. And you will surprise that out of the 17, these are the 17 sustainable goal defined in this sustainable goal category. So 10 out of this 17 sustainable development goals are focused upon this disaster risk reduction. So you can understand the importance of this. In first slide, I've explained about this meaning of disaster risk reduction. Now this slide is enough to explain the significance of disaster risk reduction. In my country, they are adopted to fulfill these international commitments that Prime Minister 10-point agenda for disaster risk reduction by Honorable Prime Minister. So here we have adopted the 10 points. That one is all development sector must imbibe the principle of disaster risk management. Second, work toward risk coverage overall, starting from poor household to the SMEs to multinational corporation of nation and state. Third is encourage the greater involvement and leadership of women in disaster risk management. Fourth is investment in risk mapping globally. Leverage of technology to enhance the efficiency of disaster risk management. Develop a network of universities to work on disaster risk issues, so that a number of repository of knowledge comes through us, and development and utilize the opportunity provided by social media and mobile technologies. There was a powerful presentation delivered by Gajendra ji on the communication as during this program. So we have to build the local capacity initiative and ensure the opportunity to learn that disaster must not go into waste, and bring about greater cohesion of international response to disaster. The webinar that we are holding today, it is also an attempt to bring about the greater cohesion in international response to disaster. That is 10-point agenda item number 10. And I would like to throw some light on the item number 9, that is ensure the opportunity to learn from disaster must not waste in my coming presentation. So as Gajendra sir also explained, these are the emergency support function that needs to work during the disaster emergency management. And there is communication. Number 1, the communication disaster. This invite, and this basically the key to the Pandora box of the disaster. Once it opens, then it means that you are not going to manage anything if in the communication disrupt. So public health services, powers, transport, search and rescue, donation, public work, engineering, information planning, relief supplies, food, drinking water, shelter, media, helplines. Now, this was the basic of disaster management that should know before going to the disaster management for the schools, because you are going to manage the disaster for the school area, but you should know what type of the component needed for that. So after these brief introduction, let us see this shared responsibility of the people. You can say the climate change is on our head, conflicts among the nations in all our way, pandemics are striking. We have witnessed the COVID-19 and we are facing the wave after wave and losing the lives in all around and all the continents of the globe. So this you can see the collaboration of disaster is, I must say that it is greater than us. So the disaster are collaborating better than us. So we have to collaborate better than them. So this initiative, let's connect with today's presentation on the school disaster management plan. We have discussed a lot of things about school disaster management plans should be there. But what should be? A teacher have the question, a student have the question, what is the meaning of the school disaster management plan? What component it should need it? So it is not a systematic approach, but a general layout by which a school can have its own disaster management plan. This I would like to discuss section by section so that there is less confusion and a lucid understanding is delivered with the help of this webinar. And I hope in the Tripura state and northeastern state and all the states that are the nation that are participating today, like Bangladesh, Nigeria, lots of people are there, and all around the world, they should understand the first thing, the school disaster management is an important aspect, because we all at some stage were students. Before going to the professional field, I was a student, you were the student, and all the people who are connected today are the students. So if the safety culture is developed at the student phase, so it is going to deliver the ready to the people who are ready to face the disaster in the coming future. So let's have discuss that whenever we plan about the school disaster management plan, I must mention that it is a general one. It differs as per the requirement of any plan. So this is general layout. This introduction, first of all, if we have the task to reduce the risk in any school, that DRR concept that I explained in my previous slide. So we must know what is the profile of the school, what kind of situation the school is facing, and we have to clearly define what are the aim and objective of the plan. If you are going to the market and you not know what you have to buy, then you are not going to, your trip is not going to be successful. That's why if the aim and objective of the plan are not clear, that is why your disaster management plan is not going to work for the school. And if it's not going to work for the school, obviously it is not going to safeguard the children and the teachers and whoever is in the periphery of that school. Section 2, after defining the introduction of school profile and aim and objective of the plan, we come on the second portion, that is hazard, risk, and vulnerability assessment. You know, whenever we take any book of the disaster management, we find certain specific word like hazard, risk, vulnerability. And initial level, whenever we should understand it is important. So non-structural assessment, structural assessment, identification of hazard outside the school campus. So we are discussing the things that are the school disaster management. So we have to also understand the what hazards are surrounding this school. So database of the past disaster accident which has affected the school. For example, as our previous speaker also said that during the Gujarat earthquake, a number of students got killed during that situation. So we know the what type of past disasters has affected that area. So this will help to improvise us at the point number 9 of the Prime Minister, item number 9 of the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister 10-point agenda said that the opportunity to learn from disaster should not waste, and you are not only going to learn from the disaster if you have documented, if you have the database of that, so that we know that what we have done when that disaster impact that area in the previous time. So after doing that, identification of vulnerable areas within the school campus. You know, lots of areas are there, like chemistry lab is the most vulnerable area, we can say. Because lots of chemicals, including the H2SO4, HNO3, lots of the acid, concentrated acids, and canteen area where the fires also. So they are the high vulnerable area in the school campus. If we identify this high vulnerable area, So we can manage these area with risk reduction point of view and safeguard our school. If we come on the third part, so after this hazard, risk and vulnerability assessment, we can see this preparedness aspect. So as a panelist of this program, I would like to say that as I think Farooq Saab also said that mitigation and the preparedness. So instead of investing money on doing the things of post-disaster events, on managing post-disaster, it is better to invest before the disaster in the preparedness, which is a very important backbone of any disaster management plan. So preparedness is something that is have the constitution of the School Disaster Management Committee, SDMC, constitution of SDMC subcommittee that includes the teachers and the students. They are all the stakeholders, and resource inventory must be there. School map, as Nakul Tarun sir will also explain that self glow map, like things they explain that. So school maps, school physical map, resource map, evacuation map. That's this evacuation maps must be there, that is visible during the time of the crisis, like the fire, when the smoke surround the staircases in the building. So if whether it is visible or not, it is going to decide whether people are going to survive or not. So that is why this evacuation maps and annual calendar for the conduction of various preparedness activities in school, capacity building and training. These are the integral part, because if I preach something today and not this thing is going to come in your ear, visit your ear any in not in coming time, so it is going to dissolve by default. So it is very important. The capacity building and training must be there with a planned schedule, with a qualified people. Then section 4 is about the response. We can consider while making any effective school disaster management plan, the response of it. Okay, 100% disaster cannot be checked. It is a reality, harsh reality. That is, if this type of things, if this type of this conditions arises in the school, so how do we are going to tackle that? For that, a response should be a prepared manner. So hazard specific response plan. What type of hazard your school is surrounded with? So you have to prepare your hazard plan as per that hazard. Like in the high altitude region, the landslide, the schools are under the hazard of landslide. In the coastal area or in the many places in the Bihar, they are the prone to the flood. So we have to plan as per the hazard. So hazard specific response plan is going to work a lot and save a lot of life at the time of the crisis. So alternate arrangement for the continuation of school education. This is something that may put the smile on all of us, because this alternate arrangement for the continuation of school education. We know pandemic has created an unprecedented crisis before the students and the education fraternity. So what happened? The students are not in the schools right now. They are the close. So alternate arrangement, you can see this online education. We can say this alternate arrangement for the continuation of the school education. But there is a concept that is digital divide. So not every person has such type of amenities, such type of equipment, so that they can continue there. So we have to go for this alternate arrangement in each school during while planning about disaster management plan. Reporting of emergency and disaster to the government. Right. So if you see the Indian Disaster Management Act, the definition. So if something is beyond your coping capacity, then you have to report that before the stakeholder responsible for that so that they can manage as per their resources and expertise. A special provision for disabled children. There are vulnerability within the vulnerability. Vulnerability profile is good for the school, but the vulnerable children may be there. So disabled children or Divyang children, they must have the special provision for that. And in the last, the mitigation, so not structural mitigation measures, safety audits that have the separate annexure-wise distribution, how the format of reporting to the emergency and disaster to the government. For example, I have write something, right? But whether if I post you to and provide that paper to you, so whether you are understand that paper or not, it is very important. So there is a reporting format to emergency and disaster to the government. So there is no dilemma. So there is no dilemma. So that people can understand and act effectively in a faster way. So second, model physical map of the school. model resource map of the school, model school evacuation plan, roles and responsibilities of the SDG, School Disaster Management Committee, subcommittees, teams should be defined so that at the time of disaster, no person have a question mark in on their forehead that what I have to do. They know their roles, they know their place, how they are going to, how they have to act. They should know. So for example, in a way, we can say in an example, we have to it's 7 type of basic committee or the subcommittees we can form, or responsibility role can be defined in this under this committee: awareness generation and communication team, first aid team, search and rescue team, evacuation team, site security team, transport management team, fire safety team. This must be the part of any school disaster management plan, a general layout of any disaster management plan. So then we have the annex 6, and last one, that is class by detail of the students is there. This details of teaching staff, details of non-teaching staff, important contact list of the emergency and disaster situation, and details of the teams under NDMC, who is in member or who is not. It should be defined clearly. And awareness generation and communication team. These are all the points that we have covered. And I would like to share one personal experience with you. There is a place named Nainital here, and this is the part of the Uttarakhand. Nainital is a district in the Uttarakhand. So I take the industrial visit of some student. There were approximately 35 to 40 students in that visit. So when we go for that visit, so students go for the industrial visit, but when they come back into the bus, return to the bus, these people, we have said to the driver that all students have come into the bus and we can go ahead. But when we count that, so we got that one person is missing. So that was the time when bus was moved ahead. But due to this documentation, due to that listing, we can identify who is missing at that time and whether that person is disabled or not. If that student is disabled, then you know that there is special care is needed at that time. So this was a lighter note example, but this lighter note become heavier when with the crisis, with the intensity of the crisis. Now, with the last point, because the time is very come, so safety is gainful and accident is painful. So safety is as simple as ABC, like always be careful. It can be someone with dislike. So this A, B, C, D, whenever we learn the vocabulary, so we know that 26 letters are there in the English vocabulary. So this is included in the 3 words, A, B, C. Always be careful and safe. So instead of paying back, we should go for the preparedness and we should go for the disaster management plan. And with this word, I would like to sum up my predictions. Thank you very much for your patience for listening. Thank you so much. And over to you, Arubdhar, sir.
Dr. Abdesh, thank you very much. Can I add some point?
Hello.
Hello, Dr. Abdesh, this is Tanushri. If permitted, can I add some points?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Sure.
I was just listening to whole program and it went off very well. I think many schools are part of this program. I have seen many people from many schools from Tripura also and Delhi also who have joined this program today, and it was a wonderful program organized by June for Solution with support of Tripura-based organization. I would like to add few points, as rightly said by Nakulji and many other guest speakers also, that schools are like conducting mock drills, but they do not have an authentic disaster management plan, which is a very important part of school safety. When we talk of school safety, it's all about like ensuring safety of children from home to school and back to home. So that can only be ensured if we have an authentic disaster management plan, and that plan must be developed under the supervision of any expert, disaster management expert. And many times Nakulji repeated this fact that we should have a self-glow map in the school, floor-wise evacuation map should be there, and each children should be aware of that plan. So it's a comprehensive package. We cannot have just mock drill, or we cannot have just capacity building program for some selected student and children. So when we develop a school disaster management plan, it's a comprehensive package of school safety, which ultimately lead to mock drill. And mock drill certainly, guide us
that whether our plan are developed in proper way or not, where we have to improve our plan. So I really appreciate the initiative been taken by this organization and Zone 4 Solution, and I wish them all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for wonderful add-on. And yes, it's a comprehensive topic. That's why it needs to be handled in a comprehensive and professional way. That, as you said, that it should be with the help of the qualified professional. And now it's the time to move ahead. Arup Dar, sir, I think one more resource person we have. So
I would request all of the participants kindly bear with us because time is very constant, and I know that almost we have our last presenter, that is Gautam Shukla Vaidya, postgraduate teacher at Bir Vikram Institute at Dharmanagar and state resource person for school safety. So he'll be talking on action point for stakeholders. Sir, you have to complete by 20 minutes because as constraint of time. Gautam Shukla Vaidya sir, you can go ahead, please.
गौतम साहब अनम्यूट कर लीजिए प्लीज.
Please provide me your skin sharing facility. Dignitaries, all honorable speakers, and ladies. Now I am in dark because power failure in our locality.
No, we can see you, sir. No issue.
Light coming from you, sir.
Yes,
So,
yes. Skin sharing facility provide me, please.
Kindly enable sir's screen sharing facility, please.
Skin share facility. It is not working.
Sir, it will take some time. They are working on that.
We are very extreme.
I have done that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sir, please.
Is it visible?
It's coming.
Visible.
No, it is coming, sir.
Sir, it's loading. It will be visible.
Okay.
For a while. Okay.
Now my discussion topic is action points for stakeholders. I discuss only school level because due to shortage of time, and it's a very important part of our DM plan. It is very important part of our DM plan. The first thing is.
Gautam sir, kindly try again to upload. It is not coming.
Right,
I can't
sir.
see it.
Not coming, no.
Yeah.
Stop and reshare it, so it will be visible.
Screen is visible.
No, it is not visible, sir.
It's not visible right now, sir.
You can go for a stop sharing and then again resharing.
गौतम साहब, अगर शेयर नहीं हो रहा है तो आप बात भी कर देंगे तो बहुत अच्छा रहेगा.
अच्छा, ठीक है, हम देख रहे हैं प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है.
और मीनवाइल अगर शेयर हो जाता है तो ठीक है.
Okay. I continuing. This is school level activities. There are three activities. One is national activities, district level activities, and school level activities. I discuss only school level activities because it is focus point, because all our speakers focused only school activities. So school activities action plan, it is our strengthening. First is school level activities, that is stakeholders, mobilize local community and the school to effectively participate in school safety actions through meetings, rallies, etc., and ensure dedicated planning by home. I can say action and by home. Home by home, that is, it activate SMC. SMC means School Management Committee. School Management Committee conduct vital role of smooth running of our all schools in India, that is SMC. Number two, the first point is strengthening institutional commitment to safe learning environment for children. The one point is mobilize. Second point is designate a school safety focal point teachers, FPT. Focal point is special responsibility, one or two teachers in school operationally anchor safety related actions at the school level as part of his or her routine commitment in the school. The special activities duty assigned by principal or headmaster. Identify and develop a cadre of peer educator for ensuring that safety messages, do and do nots of different disaster procedures and protocols reach each and every students in the school by school safety focal point teachers. Fourth one is established inclusive mechanisms to address issue in relation to school expansion and development of fire drill, power outage, early dismissal for weather events, health and safety concerns, road/bus accident by SMC/PRI. PRI means Panchayat Raj Institution or ULB, urban bodies, local bodies, ULB, urban local bodies. First. Second main major point is planning for safety. Its point conduct a detailed assessment of needs from a safety perspective for inclusion in school development plan. Number two is ensure participation of children, SMC, PRIs, ULBs, and other relevant stakeholders in the assessment of need exercise by principal, focal point teachers, or SMC. Number third one is ensure inclusion of school safety aspects, structural and not non-structural. It already discussed structure, what is structural and non-structural in school development plan. Number four is regularly monitoring risk and update plan. It also we discussed. Number five, developed an emergency response plan for school, including evacuation procedure, handling of chemicals in the laboratory, stockpiling of emergency equipments and materials by principal, focal point teachers and SAB. These activities in only school levels and very important for our school, this for the development plan, DM plan. Number third main point is implementation of safety actions. Number one sub point is review and immediately take up activities that the school can undertake on its own. Wise non-structural mitigation, example, cleaning evacuation routes, addressing loose objects, etc. Electrical some things. Number two, share components of school development plan that can be included in the panchayat plans and follow up with the relevant departments along with the PRIs. Number third, amend the timetable and school calendar to build in opportunities for reinforcement safety awareness among children and regular mock drills, etc. Mock drills already discussed in the program. Number four main points is capacity building for school safety. Identify training needs of students and teachers with regards of school safety. safety by principal and focal point teachers. NDRF, these types of training guided by NDRF, state resource persons, another resource persons from NIDMs in Tripura. Tripura is already most advanced, more and more advanced in these types of works. Number 2, awareness program for children on local hazard and risk reduction, for example through street plays, drawing competitions, quiz competitions, slogan writing, etc. These type of competition always in schools regularly. Regular mock drills and follow up the lessons on school safety. Practical demonstration. Yes.
Please,
Demonstration on the
kindly
safety equipments, etc., including designation of school safety day /DDR annually. Number 4 is training of SMC, school management committee, school management members, committee members. Training is most essential on assessment of safety needs, developing plan, as well as safety audit, because safety audit, developing plan, hazard, vulnerability, all are discussed here. It is the point of school safety program and school safety action plan. Number 5 is training of peer educators on do and do nots of disaster, mock drill, etc. Last one is monitoring school safety. This subpoint number 1, conduct safety audits in school, including fire safety and food safety, like as midday meals in rural schools, and cleanliness by fire authorities. Number 2, use school development plan to identify unaddressed hazard and additional new hazards, that's emergency. Both of these conducted by monitoring by SMC only. So monthly safety work, that is some points are here. Checklist, that means checklist. I am sorry to say, because my skin is not sharing to you, so I am speaking verbally. Checklist, that is school gates. There are so many points. I don't discuss so types of. There are 82 points. I only discuss some points only. School gates checklist. School gates. There are 3 points are here. I will share in WhatsApp. School entrance for visitors, school entrance and dispersal of students, entry, exit, structural safety, non-structural safety, toilets, empty rooms, playground, lunch area, construction in schools. These are checklists. There are so many points in these main points. Food and water sanitation, electrical safety, fire and earthquake and other disaster preparedness, pandemic COVID-19 recently added, travel safety. These already discussed. So this is the very important for us, the school safety program. In school safety, National School Safety Act 2016, under this act, there is a main important point is school level activities as per section 5 under school safety policy guidelines. There are 5 points. I repeat again, there are 5 points. One is strengthening institutional commitment of safe learning environment for children. Number 2 is planning for safety. Number 3 is implementation of school actions. Number 4 is capacity building of school safety. And last one is monitoring school safety. And another points are there are checklist in school level activities. Thank you all. I conclude my speech.
Thank you very much, sir, and God bless you, sir.
Thank you.
Abdeshi, if you permit, just wanted to add something.
Yes.
I thank Gautam sir
Yes.
to give such a insight in school safety. But I have experienced in past, I have long working experience with various national and state level bodies of disaster management. And I have experienced that most of these schools have developed its evacuation maps on
Yes,
paper.
yes.
And since all the Gangetic plains and states which are falling in Gangetic plains, Assam and northeastern part of India, are
Yes.
affected by recurring flood hazards. So this map get spoiled up whenever this kind of disasters are happening. So I would suggest that we should have self-glow map for this school, which have a long sustainable life, and even in dark, student can see that map. I would request Nakul sir to just, we are talking about self-glow map, but there is a people must wanted to know what is that self-glow map. So I would request Nakul sir if we could just flash that self-glow map on screen. Nakul sir.
Okay. I am moving my laptop where my self-glow map is placed. I think, is it visible of Desi?
No, sir, not
This is the self-glow map on my wall. And if I off my light, it will start glowing like mobile screen. So this is the self-glow map. And second point, I also want to add here, most of disaster management plan is not a signed document, but they have something made by someone like a teacher, like CD volunteers, anyone. But idea is every disaster management plan must be signed by a qualified disaster manager. Means he should take the responsibility. Yes, I have made this. Someone should own the responsibility. So this was another point which must be implemented into the school. I will request all the participating school and even parents from the both sides to initiate to make their school disaster management plan. If someone require our help, we are available. Anup Dhar is there, Gautam Saab is there. We will support you, Gautam ji. You identify a school, we will make their disaster management plan. Thank you.
And one more suggestion, I feel that this issue is very, very much needed, and people have joined, and those number of people are still sustaining in the workshop, which means that it's a burning issue and common across masses. So if we can have 2 to 3 days workshops also, spill over 2 to 3 days, 1 hour each day. That could also be done in future. It's 3 hours sitting. 3 hours is really difficult for people who have joined at 3 o'clock. So we can have 2 to 3 days workshop also on that.
Ma'am.
Thank you.
Our
Can I
Tripura.
make a contribution, please?
Desi, please move forward because it's already 6:34.
Yes, just a small contribution in respect of what the madam have said. I just want to make a small contribution, please.
Go ahead.
Hello, can I make a small contribution?
Do we have any another speaker, or we are going to conclude this?
We are going to
Okay, we have another speaker. Okay, no problem.
speaker, sir. Mr. Farooq is having some contribution. Go ahead.
Small contribution in respect to what madam said.
Do we have any another speaker, or
you know the issue?
We shall conclude this.
Okay, no problem.
This is only the concluding because Ambassador Farooq has some contribution he wants to solve. Speaker, sir.
Just small contribution, not lecture again. In respect of what the madam has just said, you know, the issue we are discussing is a burning issue globally, not only in India. Even as I mentioned earlier, in Nigeria is one of the challenges. Apart from the global pandemic, we still have insecurity, kidnapping for ransom in all my schools in Nigeria. So I think there is need for us to include the disaster risk reduction plan into their school curriculum. So instead of waiting for them to finish school and start learning about disaster risk reduction, we should include that plan into their school curriculum so that the children will grow with it. Because the response is the most dangerous aspect of it. So that is what I want to contribute to my. Let us include the disaster risk reduction plan in their school curriculum so that the children will grow with it. Thank you very much and God bless you.
I thank all of the distinguished participants. Still they are trying. Now our helping of the local representatives, our volunteers, take the collectorate help also, and after that submit the hard copy, and on the basis of the hard how far successful, and if issue comes up again we can modify and again we can test and finally we can do. I thank all the speakers, facilitators for sparing their valuable time to hear. So that we can move forward. I thank everyone for their time. If he has any question, you can just ask. Also, contribution. Thank you all. Back to you, Nakul sir, for your final comment.
Nakul sir.
Who are we waiting for?
बोलिए.
I think conclude उन्होंने कर दिया है. आप यदि कुछ कहना चाहें, that should be the concluding remarks for this wonderful program.
I would like to thank everybody. Just I want to raise ask a question with Gary. Sir, what is the recovery method of lost education in your country? Have you worked for this? Is any recovery mechanism for the lost education?
Sorry, we got someone talking over you. Sorry, could you repeat that? Someone was talking over you. No, still someone.
Gary sir, the question is, because of this pandemic, we have observed loss of education globally. So
Yes.
is there any recovery plan you have come across?
Recovery plans for pandemic?
Recovery of lost education.
For loss of education during pandemic.
For loss of education during pandemic?
Yes.
Directly within Nepal, I've not seen anything. I think it's very much down to the schools themselves reorganizing their semesters. I know that is going on. Exams have been delayed numerous times. The challenge is that different countries operate different curricula at different times with different lengths of semesters. The problem is that I think some children have had continuity of online education. Some in remote areas have not had access. So again, it's back to the education authorities at national or at province level, at state level, to assess where the gaps are. There is no blueprint for recovery of loss of education. because as I say, every country is going to be slightly different, and then different regions have had inaccessible or have been inaccessible to online learning as well. So my answer to you is I've not seen any blueprint. I think it is to be assessed by the education authorities within your province, your state, within your district. And they need to look at all levels of education, not just primary, but all the way through to university. You know, this is really, really important to ensure that you have a consistent flow of scientists and PhD students and so on and so. We don't want a 2-year gap. So some areas are covered better than others. 15.
Thank you, Mr. Gary.
Nakul sir.
जी.
Conclude करें sir, please.
So we found most of answers of question in our presentations only, like how to reopen a school, how to make our school safe. I again appeal all participants, including school students, teacher, and participants across border. Like Sad was saying, the school safety is not only issue in India, it's a global issue. So I invite you all to join hands with us, because we are doing a school safety in great way, and we need your assistance to reach last school on the earth. So please join hands with us, and we will make disaster management plan of every school, not only in India, as Sad say, wherever possible, because every kid is future of his own country, of this world. So I am thanking you all again for this wonderful session. Thank you, and we will be in touch wherever possible. Please be connected. We have our social media platform. We have our Telegram group. Already links are shared in this chat group. I am the most available chap on this earth, Nakul Tarun. You can ring me. I will respond you. Even I respond a missed call. So you can ring us at any time. I have a lot of free time. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you and God bless. Sir, many thanks. This is our 25th time I have been
Thank you.
on the online with you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So shall we end this meeting?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yep.
Okay. So we are ending this meeting. Thank you. Bye-bye.